So welcome to you all. Welcome this beautiful Sunday morning to our beautiful little center. We are so happy to start the new year with such beautiful energy in the center. And we're very, very grateful that we have back here with us one of our teachers who spent a lot of their time with us. Welcome, Venerable Geshe Namdak. Geshe Namdakla, Geshe Tenzin Namdakla was born in 1917 in Netherlands and studied there till his youth. His Buddhist studies began in 1993 at Maitreya Institute, and he was ordained as a monk by His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama. And then he started his studies at the Seraje Monastic University in Bailgupe. Geshe-la completed his 20-year Geshe study program in 2017, and since then has been teaching at the Jamyang Institute at London. Geshe-la, we are so happy to have you here. And today we are very, very honored to have you all and listen to Geshe-la as he teaches us on the nature of mind and courageous compassion. So please settle in and let's have a good time together. Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, welcome now. Okay, so welcome people here and people online. Yeah, it's for me also a little bit like being here yesterday. I'm feeling, although it's been a year, but yeah, it feels like being here yesterday. Yeah. So yeah, welcome. What we're going to talk about today, the nature of the mind, related with compassion, right? That's the topic. And before we start, we will do a few prayers. You can find in the prayer book, starting on page number 73. But before we engage in the prayers, then it's important to generate motivation before we engage in any practice, in particular in the spiritual paths or the practice. In Buddhism, we put a lot of emphasis on the motivation, right, before we start. And depending on the motivation, then also the outcome of that activity depends very much on motivation. So let's try, first of all, to generate correct motivation for today in order to understand more about the mind and its potential, and also to generate the positive states of the mind, like compassion and understanding and realizing ultimate reality, particularly the mind. So for that purpose, we're doing that in order to progress on the path for the benefit of others, right? So try to think that we all want happiness and we do not want suffering, and all sentient beings are exactly the same. Yeah, the person sitting next to you, all people in Bangalore, all people in India, yeah, the whole world, including animals, all other beings, they all want happiness and don't want suffering. That's very clear. So how wonderful it would be if we can be a cause for that to happen, meaning that we can generate more compassion and help others to achieve the same, and also understand ultimate reality, and also help others to get an understanding, to eliminate suffering. Yeah. So try to generate motivation for yourself. Yeah, and then in front, imagine Sakyamuni Buddha, same as the Buddha behind me, the statue. So imagine there's a throne supported by snow lines. On top of that is the Buddha seated in full lotus position. In full lotus position, yeah. And then surrounding yourself. Yeah. Surrounding yourself, there are countless beings and ongoing physical and mental suffering, and then think you want to do something about it, and then you start that commitment. Maybe without a mic. People can not hear me online. No? Without a mic, is it? Yeah. Okay. So generate that kind of intention that you are sitting in front of the Buddha, and surrounding you are all these beings who need to be helped, and then you imagine you lead them in the prayers. By doing so, you lead them to liberation and enlightenment, lead them beyond suffering. So take that into account and recite prayers together. To the founder, the round transcend and destroy, the one come beyond, before destroy. Complete, perfect, full awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sagat and over the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the complete, fully awakened one. Then down transcend and destroy, the glorious conqueror, subdue from the Sakya clan, are prostrate, make offerings, to the offerings. To the founder, down transcend and destroy, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the complete, perfect, full awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sagat and over the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the complete, fully awakened one. Then down transcend and destroy, the glorious conqueror, subdue from the Sakya clan, are prostrate, the Lord's good reference. To the founder, down transcend and destroy, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the complete, perfect, full awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sagat and over the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the complete and fully awakened one. Then down transcend and destroy, the glorious conqueror, subdue from the Sakya clan, are prostrate, make offerings, and offer reverence. I know supreme amongst humans, you were born in this earth, you played out the 7 strides, and that's how supreme in this world. To you, O wise and prostrate, with pure body, its forms completely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, flame that blazes in the 3 worlds, wind of the best, low to your prostrate. With supreme science, face like a spotless, color like gold to your prostrate. Thus, free like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to your prostrate. The Savior, having great compassion, the founding having all understanding, the field of merit waters like a vast ocean, to you the one count of dustness, prostrate. The purity that frees from attachment, the virtue that frees from the lower realms, the one path, sublime pure reality, the Dharma that pacifies that prostrate. Those who were liberated and showed a path in liberation, the only field qualified realizations, were devoted to the moral precepts, to use sublime community attaining virtue and prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha. To all 3 ever devote homage. To all worthy of respect, bound with bodies, as many realm and also in all aspects. With supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind morally. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visualization, flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop or a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditions. Merits may all sentient beings attain the rank of all saints, a beautiful faults, and be delivered from the dark ocean, dirt by the waves, agents, and depths. I prostrated Arya triple J. Thus I heard one time, the Bhagwan's drowning, Mars, rivers, and Viraj together with the great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagwan was absorbed in the concentration and the graduates phenomenon called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avilikutesvara looked upon the very practice of profound affection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty nature. Then to the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avilikutesvara, how should any son of the lineage reach to wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avilikutesvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, and his son of the lineage, daughter of the lineage, who wishes to practice activities from wisdom, should look upon it like this, correctly and repeating and beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is no other than form, so that's emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, accomplishment, factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, rare characteristics, unproduced, unreceived, statements, Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no existent factors in consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visible form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, no movement. There is no element, and so on, up to including no mind element and mental conscious element. There's no ignorance, extinction of ignorance, and so on, including agents. That extinction agents that. Similarly, there's no suffering, origination, cessation, and parts. There's no wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra. Therefore, because there's no attainment, bodhisattvas rely and dwell on perfection, wisdom. The mind without obscuration, without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, reach the end point of divine. And all the Buddhas dwell in three classes, also manifest completely awakened, not sparse, perfect, complete, and relies on perfection of wisdom. For the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, sparse mantra, the mantra equal to the equals. The mantra to specify all suffering should be known as the truth, since it's not false. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is declared Tayata, Gata Gata, Pada Gata, Pada Sankata, Bodhi so Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train from perfection of wisdom like that. And then the Bodhisattva concentration, commend the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya say, well said, some of the lineage just like that, Once you practice profound perfection of wisdom, just as you indicated, and even that regards with yours. Bhagavan having just spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya and those surrounding their entire, along with the worlds of gods, humans and suras, Gandhavas, were overjoyed and highly spoken by the Bhagavan. I prostrate to the gathering of the kings of the three chakras who abide of the holy yogic space. By the power of clairvoyance and magic illumination, look at Akasamada. Akasamarasasna samarayape, tayata, gata gata, pada sangata, bodhi soha. By the teaching of the supreme jewels possessing power of truth, may in and out hymns be transformed, may it be dispelled, may it be pacified. May all negative reports opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 be pacified. May we separate from problems harmful to the Dharma, and may the suspiciousness and perfect happiness here right now. Then we go to page 93. The foundation of all the qualities is the kind and perfect pure Guru. Correctly, the Guru is ruled of the parts. By clearly seeing this, applying great effort, please bless me to life and Guru with great respect. Understanding the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once. It's greatly meaningful and difficult to find again. Please bless me to generate a mind that unceasingly day and night takes lessons. This life is impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, the shadow of sorrow falls the body, the result of light and black on our body. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me to always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negativities and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain, cannot be relied upon. Recognize these shortcomings. Please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, great caution. The root of the teaching is keeping the virtue of vows. Please bless me to accomplish this sense of practice. Just as I have fallen to the sea of samsara, so all modern migratory beings. Please bless me to see this strange spring bodhicitta, its ability of free migrating. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, we do not practice the three types of morality. I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. Once I pacify distractions to one object and correctly analyze the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly in my mind stream the unified part of calm and body, special insight. Having become a pure vessel by training in the genuine part, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of fortune shrines, the supreme vital vehicle. At that time, accomplishing of pure attainment is keeping pure vows and samadhi. As I'm firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledge life. Then, having realized the importance of the two stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy, never giving up before the session. Please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, may the Gurus who showed me noble paths and spiritual friends who practice that alone. Please bless me to completely allow to me. In all my lives, never separate from perfect Gurus, may enjoy the news and Dharma, by completing quality stages and paths, may I quickly do things about that. Yep, we short mandala. Bottom of the next page. Dayami Sangye Chudon Suni Shana Shanju Babu Dani Gyatsu Dagi Shushu Gibe Sunu Dola Penshe Sangye Loba Sho Sangye Chudon Suni Shana Shanju Babu Dani Gyatsu Dagi Shushu Gibe Sunu Dola Penshe Sangye Loba Sho Sangye Chudon Suni Shana Janjo Bado Dani Yasu Dagi Shishu Gibbons Dola Pinche Sangue Doba Shilolagan. Yutun Do Kanginizm Music, Tawatanchi Banas. Yeah, the great Arya Nagarjuna of your place, I mean, ancient India, yeah, and in particular southern part of India. The great Arya Nagarjuna said in his, if I remember correctly, in his praise of the Vajra mind, it's a very inspiring text. Then he says that all suffering, so to say, comes from elaborations of mind or web or the matrix. You've seen the movie probably. So all suffering comes from this elaborations or web, you could say, or matrix of the mind. Yeah. And then that is also be eliminated by the nature of the mind itself. So for that purpose, I pay homage to the mind's nature. Yeah, that's kind of what Arya Nagarjuna is a very rough translation, but that's more or less what Arya Nagarjuna is saying in praise of the Vajra mind. So there's many other texts. Shantideva, as you know, the Bodhisattva child of Tara, in the beginning of the first verse, to be exactly, in chapter 9, the chapter on wisdom, right? There also Shantideva says that all the branches of the teachings of the Buddha were meant to prepare disciples for the realization of emptiness, of ultimate reality. You know? And then if you read the commentaries on that particular verse, that first verse, chapter 9, particular, there's two commentaries emphasized by His Holiness Dalai Lama in the Nyingma tradition. And then Kenzang Pelden, one of the Dzogchen masters, he gives a very interesting commentary on that first verse. That, of course, all the teachings of the Buddha, every teaching of the Buddha is meant to let the disciples understand ultimate reality. Yeah, because all suffering is rooted in ignorance, and this ignorance has to be eliminated, and it can only be eliminated by understanding ultimate reality. So that's exactly why the Buddha taught that ultimate reality is not an easy topic, but the most important one, because that is eliminating all suffering. Yeah. So then also, same commentary, Pelden also says that that is related with compassion as well, because if you understand ultimate reality, then your compassion will almost naturally increase. It doesn't mean that the mind realizing emptiness becomes a mind of compassion, but if you realize emptiness, your compassion will increase, and that's very clear in other scriptures as well. And meditators from their own experience, they talk about that. So that's why that's the topic of today, to combine those two topics, ultimate nature of reality and compassion. Also in the Mahamudra traditions, it's very inspiring text by the Doas or the spiritual songs. you know, the various masters of the Mudra, Sharaha, for example, the great Indian Mahasiddhas, right, the 84 Indian Mahasiddhas. Also there, it's very interesting quotes, or there's one text in Mudra, root text by Naropa Kaza, sorry, Tilopa, root guru. There also talks about similar aspects. If you understand the ultimate nature of the mind, then compassion will increase. So why is that true? Yeah, because if you understand the nature of the mind, then you understand that the mind can be free of afflictions. Yeah, so it's like the blue sky. It's never really obscured by the clouds. Yeah, you can have as many clouds as you want. Yeah, luckily you live in South India, so you have always quite nice weather. But if you follow me to London, then you know it's different. We have quite a lot of overcasts and yeah, clouds, so to say. Yeah. When I was in the monastery here for more than 2 decades, then you know, when I left the monastery, then I told my friends, I'm going to a place where the sky is gray and the buildings are gray. So, but yes. So that means that, but above the clouds, there's still the blue sky remains blue sky. Yeah, so same here during monsoon periods, then there are some clouds, but above the clouds, there is still, when it's foggy, if you go above the clouds, the blue sky is still there. So it is also true for our mind. Yeah, our mind is very similar to the blue sky, and we have all these clouds of the afflictions coming and going. Yeah, the disturbing emotions. And when the clouds are a bit darker, then we don't really see the blue sky. So that's kind of. But when your mind is in its nature, or you know, you do a little bit of meditation, you touch upon the nature of the mind, yeah, even on a conventional level, then the clouds do not obscure you, right? They don't not really, they're there, afflictions, but they don't influence you. So that's also a reason that if your mind, the most subtle state of mind, is free of those temporary or adventitious afflictions. Yeah, so our mind, its nature, so to say, even on the conventional level, is free of afflictions. Yeah, so that's also many quotes in the sutras and so in the commentaries on the sutras. That one quote where it says, there is no mind, there's only the clarity of the mind, as the clear mind. So one quote in the sutras, or it says that all afflictions are adventitious, and the mind itself is kind of luminosity or clear mind. Yeah, so that's for many sources proves that our most subtle mind is free of those afflictions, the clouds of afflictions. And that's not only true for our mind, but it's also true for the mind of each and every one of us. Yeah, we all have temporary afflictions, but deep down below, the mind is clear and knowing. Or you can think about other examples you find is if you have a lake or a beautiful ocean, you know, the beautiful beach, then the palm trees, blue ocean, yeah. And sometimes the clouds come and there's some storms, yeah. But the storms, they create the waves, you know, and some of the waves can be quite frightening. You see, when I was young, I was once also on a boat, the North Sea, you know, Netherlands and UK, between this. So it was wind force, I don't know what it was, 8 or something. And I was quite young. I was with my father and my brother on a boat. And the waves were so high, it was like a 2-story building high or something. So then the boat goes down, and then there's just water around yourself. Because of the waves. And then you're on top of the wave, and then you see around you a little boat there, but the waves are huge. So you always think, do we make it to the coast? Really, boats like this. Yeah. But then if you go down in the water, then deep down below, there's no movement. The movement is only on the surface. Yeah, so for our mind is very similar. And then the problem is we always on the surface. So we always in the clouds. And then we don't really recognize the peaceful aspect of the mind. Yeah. But those clouds and those waves deep down below, there's no movement, right? And in the blue sky, there are no clouds. So that proves that the afflictions, as we call them, or disturbing emotions, they just adventitious, they're just temporary. Yeah. And that's not only true for you, but it's true for all sentient beings. Yeah. All beings have these temporary disturbance of mind, but they also have this potential that can be free of these disturbances. So if you understand that, and then you start to see, oh, all beings have this clarity of the mind, and then around that clarity is all this junk. So you could think, just think that planet Earth is not exactly the same, but similarity. Yeah. You think that the planet Earth is a perfect paradise, which is not really the case, unfortunately. But if you watch the news, but if you think like that, right? If you see the Earth as a beautiful paradise, and then we have all this space junk circling around these days. Yeah, so that space junk is connected with the paradise because of gravity. It cannot escape, right? So it always keeps circling. So in a similar way, our clear light mind, the clarity has this connection, what we call a karmic connection, with the space junk, disturbing emotions and karma. Right? So when you get sick, for example, it's not that most of you won't think, oh, so nice, I'm sick today. I want to be sick for a few days, if possible. You'd never think like that. But the sickness is beyond our control. Although we want to get better, it's not going to happen. Although we're unhappy, we don't want to be unhappy. So that means there is something going on. There is something beyond our control that happens, right? So that's kind of like this space junk related with gravity, the paradise, and in a similar way, these afflictions and karma is related with this clarity of our mind. But there's a potential to eliminate this space junk, or to eliminate these karmic actions and these afflictions, so to say. Because as long as you stay in the clear light mind nature, then these afflictions do not disturb you, right? So that proves that these afflictions are not an innate part of the mind. It's pretty obvious. Yeah. It also proves that they can be eliminated. You can eliminate these afflictions. Because why can you eliminate these afflictions? Because these afflictions come and go by the power of cause and conditions. They're not always present. You're not always angry, for example. Yeah. So you wake up from a pleasant dream and you want to roll over and dream over, but there's no time, or even if there's time, it doesn't happen. You get on the dream. But so then you see this annoying message or this annoying person, and then peace of mind is gone. Yeah. So there's a trigger that triggers the affliction, and then the affliction becomes manifest. Yeah. So the clue is to work with the triggers, or to change the mind. If there's an annoying message, or a person says something unpleasant to you,
it's so nice. And it is so nice. So every time you come, you must chat. No, even I look forward to, like, even when I'm going on the weekend, Resha wants to be there. So sweet. So sweet. And whenever
so if somebody says something unpleasant to you, if you really analyze, somebody sends an annoying message, or saying something to you which you don't like, then we think, I'm unhappy now because of this person, right? Because of this message, this person. So the cause of your unhappiness is not you. is that person or that message or you know, what the person says. It's completely wrong if you say that, if you think like it. Because if you train your mind, whatever people say or think or message you, it doesn't have to disturb your mind. The thing that disturbs you is your reaction. Yeah? It's not that person and not the words. That's not really harming. It's your reaction to it that harms. You see? So that's what Nagarjuna says. This the suffering is caused, or you could say samsara and nirvana are caused by the mind. Yeah? So if somebody says something nasty to you, then you can do two things. You can just think, okay, the person, is overpowered by an affliction, and that's why the person is also maybe a bit unhappy, and that's why the person says something. If you think like that, then the words don't harm you, right? But if you think, oh, this person, then you react, and then you get unhappy. So the real problem is not a person. It's just a condition. The real cause for being unhappy is your reaction, right? So, and that we can change, that we can change. So that proves that the real suffering is actually caused by the mind. Then in a similar way, when you experience suffering, physical suffering of sickness, then you say, yes, because my immune system is not correct, and there's this virus going along, and blah, blah, blah. Of course, it's true. There are conditions, right? But the real cause for sickness is also what we call karma, right? So karma is not something only true in India, or karma is only true for Buddhists or only true for Hindus or something like that. That's not true. Karma is true for each and every individual, if you're believer or non-believer. So karma is nothing else, if you want to put it in simple words, karma is nothing else than the kasa, the cause and effect relationships within the continuity of consciousness. That's what it is. So in London, we do all kind of things. We do programs, Buddhist programs, and secular programs, and do things with Google and things like that, and Oxford University, and with scientists, but it's very interesting. The topic karma is extremely interesting. Of cause and effect relationships, that even in science, we have various variables that play a role in existence. And even people like David Bohm talked about hidden variables. So the implicate order, so to say. There's an underlying reality we might not completely understand, but its correlation with what we do understand, that can be examined. So if you look at that, and then you relate it with karma, it's very interesting. That karma in that way is very scientific. It's not just a religious thing. You believe in it or you do not believe in it. And if you believe in it, it's true, and if you don't believe in it, it's not true. That's not the case. So karma is very complex because we don't really understand it, and then because we don't understand it, we don't believe in it. Yeah, but in science, there's so many things we don't understand. So karma is this underlying reality that creates cause and effect relationships. So a similarity to that is memory. Memory is also an activity within the continuity of consciousness, right? So I recently came across this hyperdementia, which is an extremely interesting phenomenon. So karma is also kind of, you could say, information theory, that similar, if you understand memory well, then you can relate it to karma. That means that if you look at memory, so today it's, what is it? 12th of January 2025, right? Yeah. So if I ask you, what did you do on the 12th of January 1996 at quarter past 11? Do you remember? No. I asked this question to a few of my friends in Spain, And it was actually one person's birthday. So she said, oh, it was my birthday. Yes, of course. Yeah, yes, it was true. But then I said, what was the weather like? You know? Yeah. So, so we don't remember, right? We don't remember that period. But that does not mean that information is not there. You see? We just don't have the capacity to remember, because there are people who can remember that. And the hyperdementia is a very interesting phenomenon. There's not many, but there are. Yeah, so there are people. There's one lady in the US. She remembers just every day of her life. You know, very interesting. You ask her the question. This year, this date. Say, okay, it was this kind of weather. We went to the beach, and this was on the news, and blah blah blah. And then you check. You can check these days on the news. And then she was in one talk show once, and then the presenter asked her, well, it was sitting with a book, you know, you have these books with the news over the last 20 years. I mean, I don't know if you're interested in that, but some people are, I suppose. That's why they publish those books. But then, because the news, you know, when I was in monastery in Serra, here close by, I came to Bangalore, you know, every month here to say a few things. I don't know, it was beneficial, but came and talked. And then I stayed here in Shivam Homes close by, and then once a month I watch the news, BBC News or something like that. Or, you know, what is it, 10, 20 minutes. And then I thought, oh, same as last month. I didn't miss anything. Yeah, it's very similar, right? Anyway, so Kasa, going back to the story. So why did you go to the news? Yeah, okay, because this lady was in this talk show, you know. And then she was being asked, what happened on this and this date? And then she said, okay, this was on the news, this happened. And then the presenter said, oh, you're wrong, because there was a few days later. And she said, I'm not wrong, she said. And then the guys behind the scene were Googling in it, you know, and he said, okay, the book is wrong. So it's very interesting that she just knows exactly. Yeah, so there's probably in India a few people like that. In the UK, there was also a person, not that. Yeah, he was also good. So that means that there's information we don't have access to, but some people do have access to it. Yeah, so karma is very similar. Memory, if you engage in an activity or perception, yeah, when you have a perception of something, your consciousness of seeing something or hearing something comes to an end, right? You look somewhere and you look somewhere else. Yeah. But you can remember what you saw over a particular period of time. So that proves that whenever a perception comes to an end, that information is not lost. That's what we do. And it's true for everything we see, it's true for everything we hear, it's true for everything we taste, it's true for everything we smell, it's true for everything we think about, it's true for everything we do physically and verbally. That's also true, you know? So that's very interesting, because whatever you do physically, verbally, or mentally, that information is never lost. You see? So that's kind of what we call karma. So then that comes to ripening when it gets triggered by causing conditions, and that's why we get sick, you know, and that's why we die at a time we don't want to die. There's not many people who will say, okay, I'm going to die now, great. It's only very few people who are ready for dying. Yeah, I mean, very interesting people, yeah, masters of the tradition. They completely ready. Just last month I was in monastery. I went a few times to see Jesus machine, previous government too. And he has one person in his house group, I think he's also in his probably 90s. For the last few years, whenever I saw him, he said, I'm ready. He said, I have my ticket. I'm just waiting, he says, you know, for it to happen, you know. So so some people are completely ready for dying. So most of us then first when you talk about death, they think, oh no, don't want to think about it. So, but that's going to happen, right? So that means that there's a reality there. We try to escape the reality of suffering. We try to escape the reality of death, dying. Yeah. But the more you understand reality, the less suffering there is. The more prepared you are. Because you're going to die. That's pretty obvious. Yeah, there's no one who can escape that. So the more you understand that reality, the less suffering is there. You know, even David Bohm, I just mentioned him as one of my favorite quantum physicists next to Bangalore Valley. David Bohm, when he was dying, he wrote his wife. I think he was in the UK and his wife was German, for sure. So then he wrote his wife that it's close to coming to death. I think the doctors told him, and then he said, at least something has come to an end now. Because he was always working on various projects. You know? So because he was understanding reality, in particular, the reality of what we call dependent origination. Yeah. So then he said he could understand and relate to that. He's completely ready. You know, so very interesting. Yeah. So yeah, go back to the karma. That because of karma and afflictions, that's why we suffer. Yeah. So we say, yeah, it's the immune system, but why is the immune system not working properly? Because some people do get sick with the virus, and other people do not get sick with the virus. Yeah. So there is much more going on than just the immune system or the virus. So there's this underlying reality of cause and effect relationships, of information, of activities we have engaged in this previous lifetimes. Yeah, so I say this and previous lifetimes. Yeah, in India it's a bit easier to talk about it because I think most of you or not believe in reincarnation or not. Who does not believe in reincarnation? Well, that's easy. So if you believe in reincarnation, then why? That's another question, right? Yeah, it's important to understand because the Buddhist doctrine is very much related with that aspect. That this whole information theory is there since beginner's lifetime, not just this life. Then you see how complex it is. If you have one lifetime and you have one day, 24 hours, how many moments of perceptions are there? 24 hours. You know, how many thoughts are there? How many physical actions are there? How many verbal actions are there? How many mental actions are there in 24 hours? It's quite a lot. Yeah. So you multiply that 24 hours with what is it, 365 days a year, and you multiply that with your age, and then you know there are a lot of activities, a lot of information. And then you multiply that with beginningless lifetime, then you, because there's no beginning or continuity of consciousness. So then you come to a level of complexity of information that is very difficult to understand. Yeah, maybe after. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So because of this complexity, that's why many people just don't understand karma, and that's why they don't believe in it, because it's too complex. But by the power of this information, because there should be a cause for us to get sick, and there should be a cause for us to die, right? Yeah, so what is this underlying reality that actually causes to suffer? And what is the underlying reality that helps us to eliminate the suffering? Yeah, that's two very important questions. So the underlying reality that causes us suffering, first of all, are the afflictions, yeah, anger, obsessive desire, jealousy, pride, and traditional ones, but also anxiety, fear, depression, they cause us to suffer, yeah, mentally. Yeah. So then it's important to know what is the cause of all this suffering? What is the root cause of this suffering? Yeah, that is root cause of this suffering is what we call ignorance or apprehension of an self that does not exist the way it appears. Yeah, so a mind is there. We all talked about luminosity and clear mind is there, but then often we also think there's this Atma or this I is there, this self as an independent entity. Yeah, when you get angry or when there's obsessive desire, or when there's fear, for that you grasp at something. When you're dying, or you imagine you're dying, you want to hold on to something that you don't want to lose. But you're not going to lose anything. Your body, yes. Your body you leave behind. So your continuity of consciousness remains. So it's not something to worry about, oh, I'm going somewhere and I don't know where I'm going, because we have died so many times. So there's not that dying is something you should be afraid of, because it's very easy. It just happens. You don't. It just happens to you when you die. Yeah, it just happens. Yeah? So, but we often grasp onto something that exists in and by itself. Yeah, we call this I or self. When you have anger or obsessive desire or fear for death, then this self, this I, appears very strongly, very clear. If I say to you, I count to 3, and then all of you get angry, right? 1, 2, 3, there you go. Then it's not easy to generate anger. But if I talk about the way you look, or your glasses, or your hair, or your dress in a very negative way, and you say, oh, Namdak, how dare Namdak say this to me? I am not like that. Yeah, so then the I comes in. Yeah. So the question is, does that I actually exist the way it appears? That's the question. Yeah, and that's not only a Buddhist, I mean, it's a Buddhist teaching, but also other, even in science, they talk about it. Now in neuroscience, cognitive science and neuroscience, there's a lot of interest in self. Yeah, we had a lot of interest in content, interest in level of consciousness. So what is consciousness? What are the different levels of consciousness? What are the objects of consciousness? But there's also a lot of interest in the perception of the self. Yeah. So Anil says, is a kind of materialistic neuroscientist, very true. He doesn't believe in something what we call consciousness that is separate from the brain. For him, it's just emergent property of the brain. But when you talk about subjective aspects of consciousness, including the perception of the self, then even Anil Seth, who is kind of world-leading scientist in the field of neuroscience, then he says the perception of a self is also just like any other perception. It's just a perception, a controlled hallucination, as he calls it. So that means that the perception of a self, and David Hume, one of the Scottish philosophers, he also says the self is just a bundle of perceptions. It's very interesting. Yeah? Very close to one of the Buddhist schools. We call this Vatantika school. And I talked about David Bohm, a physicist, a theoretical physicist, quantum mechanics. Also, he very clearly indicates that the self-deceptive thought, or the self-identity, is causing a lot of problems in society, because it causes us to have security and only think about your own country. And we see that in different countries make great again. So they say great again. Our country. They don't say make the world great again. No. They say make this country great again. Us, not them. And so then, so then David Bohm said already many years ago. He said that self-deceptive thought, or the self-identity, right? You can see people who are narcissistic. They have this very strong, and it creates problems in society. That's what David Bohm said, a physicist. It causes security, it causes making distinction between us and them, and it causes conflicts. It's very true. Yeah. So, but then he also says this self-identity, the self-deceptive thought, which is very interesting terminology. He says is a cause for these problems, but actually it's just a show. It's not really there. But he says it's a very convincing show. That's why people take it as an apparent reality. It's very interesting terminology. Right? So in Buddhism, we talk about similar things, that this I is something that appears in a particular way. But if you analyze, it does not exist the way it appears. And it causes problems. So to cut things short, we've been extremely stupid, not just this life, but countless lifetimes. Because we believed in something that did not exist, first of all. And then we believed in it, and then it caused us to suffer. So now it's time to do something about it. That's what we say. So that we have to do something about this self-deceptive thought or self-identity, whatever you call it. But in Buddhism, we describe it in various ways of various levels of Buddhist tenets. Yeah, there is a self that seems to appear in an independent way. But if you just looked, as we talked about, the nature of consciousness, that is this blue sky kind of mind, and then clouds sometimes obscure it. So there's a constant flux of coming and going of mental states. Yeah. And in that flux of coming and going of mental states, there is no solid entity that we call I or self. You know, if you look in your body, from the tip of your toes to the crown of your head, can you find anything concrete that you can call a self or an I? Is it there in your heart? Your heart is going, your lungs are functioning. You know, it's all walking in there. It's a miracle by itself. But there is no entity that you call a self anywhere in between your organs or your skull. Or, you know, it's just a process of cells. You know, if you look at your, you know, every 24 hours about 70 or 60 billion cells change. Depends which cells you count, but so every second there's a few 100,000 cells that change, right, in your body. When you look in the mirror, that doesn't appear like that. When you look in the mirror, you think that's me. Same as yesterday, same tomorrow. It's not true. It's completely nonsense. If you look in the mirror every hour there's a different body reflecting in the mirror. It's not, that's pretty clear. If you just use a little bit of logic, the cells change every split second. So that is very interesting. You see this body, it's constant moving. You're not physically running around. Of course, you can do that. But even if you sit, it's constant movement, right? The cells are constant changing. But it doesn't appear like it. It appears as a solid entity. But that's not really true. So if you know that all the cells are changing in the different organs every split second, then can you find an I anywhere inside or in between the organs or not? Then you can find. Then can you find it separate from your body? You put your body aside, the I is still completely separate, like a cat and a dog. Visualize you cut is also a very interesting meditation. You visualize. Take away this arm, you take away that arm, this leg, that leg. So you take parts of your body away, you know? So if there's an I there, you see first how the I appears, and then you analyze. If there's an I there, the more parts of your body you take away, the clearer the I should become. Right? So same if you have a bag full of, let's say, yellow seeds, and there's one orange seed in between. The more yellow seeds you take away, the easier it will become to see that orange colored seed, right? So the more parts you take away, this I should become clearer and clearer. It's not the case. So it's very tricky. It seems to be mixed with the aggregates, but you cannot find it anywhere. It seems to be mixed with your body, but you cannot find it. Same with your mind. If you look in different thoughts, in different perceptions, particularly the clarity of the mind, yeah, you get some experience of that. And then you look in the past, present, and future. It's constantly changing. In the mind, also the present is not really present, in the sense that if you look in the present, the moment you say, "Oh, this is the present," that's already past. Yeah, so you cannot find in the continuity of consciousness, you cannot stop it and say, "Oh, this is it." Right? So in the moments of your mind, you cannot find an I there. You know, you can say, "Okay, this is my consciousness, this is my body." Yes, you can say that. But is there this self-sufficient or this self-identity or this inherent? There's different views about that. Is there this independent I somewhere in your body? Is there independent I somewhere separate from your body? Is there an independent I in the moments of consciousness? or separate from the moments of consciousness. If you really analyze, you cannot find. Yeah, so even the most subtle level of mind is exactly like that. You cannot really find anything substantial. You know, so that proves that this ignorance, this holding to this I, which causes problems, because we just saw with getting angry or with obsessive desire, there's always a sense of an I that comes up. Same with depression, same with anxiety, same with fear. There's always a sense of an I. I am depressed, or why me? I'm the only one in the universe, or something. It happens, right? When you're sick. When you're sick, it's kind of why me? When depression is there, it's always centralized about this. The I being the center of the universe, or only you. You don't think about others. And it's very clear in the science that one of my friends, a few people actually do. Recently, I met another person in one of the universities in the UK who does very interesting research in ego dissolution related with Buddhist tenets of philosophy. So ego dissolution happens in certain therapies with psychedelics, for example. This talk is not meant to use psychedelics, but it's just looking at the science behind it, right? Yeah, it's very interesting. So people with those therapies, when they use the substance things, then there is an ego dissolution happening. And when the ego dissolution is happening, they don't see their problems anymore. And so they feel much better. They feel more connected with others, and they don't have this depression or whatever mental issues they have. Is not really present when there's ego dissolution. So we're not interested in the psychedelics, but we got some person asked me, do you want to try? I said, no, that's okay. I know meditation techniques who are maybe much more sophisticated, especially on the long term, because true, psychedelics is just a very temporary. You don't do mental training after it or with it, then it's just a temporary thing, and then you stop with it, and then a few weeks it's the same again. So you have to train your mind. If you don't train your mind, then medicine is there outside. Yeah. So, but the theory behind it is extremely interesting. So that means when there's ego dissolutions, it benefits that person. Yeah. So then, if you habituate your mind to ego dissolution over a long period of time, then there's even more benefit. Yeah. So that's possible by these meditations on the ultimate nature of the mind, or meditations on what we just talked about, seeing there's no from its own side existing self. Yeah, so that's a very interesting science. Yeah, so to collaborate that with views of selflessness, and then proves that the Buddha, without psychedelics, already 2,500 years ago, proved these points. That's if you be able to get rid of this ego, so to say, then there's more happiness. Very interesting. Yeah, that's even in science. So many narcissistic views and things like that is very destructive for the individual, and narcissistic people or narcissistic character very destructive for their direct environment. Yeah, we see that with world leaders also very easily. Yeah, the stronger the ego is, the more problems arise for that individual, as well as for the people around it, as well as for the whole country, as well as other countries. That's very clear. There was one very interesting person in the US, he died during the pandemic. Jared Post. Jared Post was a psychiatrist, I think a psychiatrist, and he worked for the CIA. And he had to profile world leaders. So that was his job, to understand the minds of world leaders. Because if you understand the minds of leaders, then you can predict, if I do this, what will that leader decide to do? Yes, that's these days what people are interested in. People are not interested in happiness. People are interested in controlling things and kasa, yeah, power and yeah, things like that. But so Jared Poe is a very interesting person. He's a lot of, so he also said that the stronger the person is narcissistic, the more predictable the person is in the sense, what will the person do if this happens? The same happens to certain coming presidents. Yeah, it's very interesting. So Jared Poe, he was not allowed to screen the one who was coming up. But yeah, it's very interesting science. You know that this ego, so to say, is cause for problems. So the more you understand the clarity of the mind, then this ego, the coarser form of the ego, first of all, does not arise. And so if you touch down upon this blue sky of the mind, or this clear-eyed mind, then afflictions are not strong. And that helps already to reduce the coarser aspects of what we call grasping at a self. Yeah, that's a subtler one. Same with ego dissolution. Doesn't mean what some people think, oh, ego dissolution means you realize emptiness. No. It's just a coarser form of an appearance of a self. It's not there. But there's a subtle one. And so also the subtle one has to go, because if you still have a subtle one, then you can never eliminate suffering of samsara. So, but if you understand the conventional nature of the mind, there's two aspects here. There's a conventional nature of the mind and an ultimate nature of the mind. Yeah, so the conventional nature of the mind is this clear-eyed mind, you could say, and the ultimate nature of the mind is the emptiness of the clear-eyed mind. Yeah, so emptiness does not mean nothingness. Yeah, emptiness is kind of an absence of a self. Yeah, emptiness is always related, not nothingness, but something is lacking. Yeah, I always use the example of the lack of an elephant here in CKSL. We all agree there's no elephant in the room. So that means the room is lacking an elephant. The room is empty of elephant. So that proves that emptiness is always empty of something. It's not mere nothingness. If you read about sunyata or emptiness, it's not just nothingness. There's a lot of misunderstanding. It means something is lacking. So what is lacking is this independent I, or this independent self, or what we say, this inherent or intrinsic self. There is no inherent I. There is no from its own self-existing I. You cannot find it in your body. You cannot find it in the mind. You cannot find it between the body and the mind, neither separate from the body and the mind. So we are lacking this intrinsic or this inherent or this independent I. There is no independent I. But it appears to be there. And then when it appears, it causes us to suffer. Yeah, so the same with this example. It's so striking. Yeah, most of you probably know already, but maybe people who have it, I didn't see it much before, maybe they don't know, but it's just such an interesting example. When this person who was depressed met with His Holiness and Dalai Lama, and then psychiatrist was there. And someone says, "What's wrong? What's bothering you?" She said, "I'm depressed." And then someone didn't say, "Oh, sorry to hear that. That's right. So I'm so sorry to hear that. Please sit down." Someone didn't say that. Someone is very direct. So someone says, "Why are you depressed?" Yeah, right, direct. And he explained a bit, and then someone said, "Who is depressed?" She said, "I am depressed." And then someone says, "Where is this I then?" She says, "Here." I said, "Okay, you close your eyes." And then she closed her eyes. And then someone said, "Now you move this eye from the left to the right for a few centimeters." And then she started smiling. She said, "Oh, it's not there." It's very interesting. So it's a very interesting example, because if you see there is no I, then automatically it gives a kind of relief. So that's very interesting. So striking example. Yeah, and same with the ego dissolution we just talked about. The science behind it is very solid. Yeah, the Buddha 2,500 years ago was basically a scientist of the mind. So mind science. So it's very interesting. So these days, many people are interested in Buddhism, because Buddhism, as you know, is quite open, can be explained in a very secular and universal way without to become a believer and things like that. Same, I became a part-time tutor at Oxford University. So I did summer school this year. Taught school, course on emotional intelligence and Buddhist mind science. Very interesting that just talk about these points in a secular context, because the people, students they're not Buddhists, of course, they're just experts in their own field, part of continuing education, and they're just interested in the Buddhist interpretation of emotional intelligence. So then we talk about these things, and then said, so it makes sense. Sounds very scientific, and that's really true. So I was just walking around. There's not many monks walking around in Oxford, but so in the beginning I thought, oh, what will people think? But people are just interested in the philosophy behind it, right? Very interesting. So that's basically your philosophy, Asian philosophy. So it's so interesting that 2,500 years ago, the Buddha already talked about this aspect of self being a cause for problems, right? And in modern society, there's so much interest now in mental health because people are struggling. So that's so interesting. But in most, not all, but there is positive psychology and things like that. In many types of Western psychology, this aspect is lacking. And now they start to generate more interest, neuroscience. And recently I had a dialogue, because we also do dialogues with scientists, world-leading scientists. So recently I had a dialogue with Thomas Metziger. Thomas Metziger is a German philosopher, and he did a lot of research with MIT in the aspect of no self, and he proves no self from cognitive and neuroscience. Very empirical studies, very interesting. So that's So he also says that there is no the subjective experience of the self is just an hallucination. It's not really there. Same as I mentioned and said. So in many forms of science, we see similarities that we don't really see there. It appears there is the perception. The perception of a self exists, but what that perception apprehends, or what that perception holds on to, that object of that perception, so to say, does not exist. You see? So that's very interesting. Before we move on, maybe, because it's not easy topic, so maybe we need a strong coffee or tea. So maybe we have a break. People online, you have your brew ready? Okay. So maybe let's say 15 minutes break. Let's say 12 o'clock or something like that. 12:05. I'd be kind. 12:05. Have you your brew ready? Okay. Okay, so dedicated to bodhicittas here. Janju Sanjo, my dear Pana, Jeba Yamba, Tony Tower in Bochi, my dear Pana. Jeba Yamba, Bonin London, sure. And well,
Geshe-la, we have lunch arranged for everyone, so we'll break for lunch at 1 o'clock. Geshe-la, is that okay? And please join us for lunch and have lunch. We can get back to teachings at 2 p.m.
But now tea, right?
Yes, right now it's tea.
Coffee.
Tea and coffee.
There we go.
Thanks.
Ready? So before we start, people online, you're back. You're kind of whatever. Break. So generate correct motivation before we start. Yeah, so if you see that the mind itself, the conventional aspect of the mind is free of disturbance. Said blue sky is free of the clouds, or deep down below in the ocean, it's very still water. It's not moving like on the surface. So that proves that deep down below, the subtle aspect of our mind also has this clarity, or this luminosity of being free of disturbance. That's one aspect. The other aspect we talked about is that the disturbance of the afflictions, are just very temporary. They come, abide, and disintegrate. Then we also saw that these disturbances of the afflictions, they can be taken away. Why? Because they're not in it part of the mind, and they depend on cause and conditions to arise, abide, and disintegrate. And also they're not according to reality. We saw with ignorance, for example, that ignorance is not in accordance with reality. So there's three very important reasons. Three reasons why we can eliminate disturbance of the mind. Solens often talks about that, but you can find back in the writings of the Pramanavartika, in particular Kelsam J's commentary on the Pramanavartika, very clear that it indicates these three reasons, that the mind afflictions are not an innate part of the mind. That's one reason, right? Another reason is that the afflictions come and go by cause and conditions. So if you play with cause and conditions, you can do something about it. And then they're not according to reality. We know that anger overestimates the faults, attachment overestimates the qualities. That's not according to reality. So and this all rooted in ignorance, but is not according to reality. So all the minds that are not according to reality causes problems. That's very clear. And the root of all this is ignorance. So I said, if you understand there is no I, right? In the sense, no inherent I, or no intrinsic I, or no independent I, then you start to realize that that afflictions, they will lose their potential to become manifest because they're related, and there's a strong sense of I, then the afflictions become stronger, and then the afflictions become stronger, the I becomes stronger. The I is stronger, the afflictions become stronger. So in Buddhism, there's one text, it's pretty hardcore text on karma. Anyway, for those who are more senior in the Buddhist doctrine, they can read. There's a text that's called The Wheel of Sharp Weapons. It's not about martial arts. Sometimes people think, even when I'm in London, I walk on the street as, dressed like I normally do as a monk. Many people are very positive, thanks to the guidance of Solens Dalai Lama. They put thumbs up, or oh wow, or they ask me sometimes to do prayers for them, people live on the street. But also some people, they do like this. They think I'm kind of a martial arts specialist. They always sometimes ask, do you know martial arts? I said I used to, but before I became Buddhist. So you meet all kind of people. But then, why did I say that?
Wheel of sharp weapons.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not about wheel of sharp weapons, those things people have in martial arts. It's not about that. Wheel of sharp weapons is a text that the wheel returns. That means the karma returns. So all the suffering we experience is basically created. And we started today with a quote by Arya Nagarjuna. It's great, by the matrix of the mind. I think all of you have seen Matrix, the movie. I lost interest in movies after becoming a Buddhist monk, but then I was forced by a few of my friends to watch that movie, The Matrix. They said, you should watch Namdak, you should watch it because it's very Buddhist. I mean, I don't know if it's not really a Buddhist movie, but it has some principles with similarities, let's put it that way. So, but very interesting because, if you know the movie, there's these agents with this little black sunglasses, and the chief is Mr. Smith. It's very interesting. If you want to relate it, it's kind of you want to get out of samsara, and these agents, they come and try to take you back. You know? And that you could think there are the habituation patterns of our negative minds of the past. It's very simple. That we want to improve our mind, and then our mind tells us, no, don't do this. You know, don't do this. So you go back to your old habits, and then you lose it all again. Yeah, so that's, you can say, a matrix of mind. There's another text by because Benjamin Lobson Choe Gyatsen is a text called Wisdom Debating Ignorance. It's not an easy text, but very good text. It's free also online translation. So this text is very interesting because there's a debate between ignorance and wisdom. You know? It's very playful. One of my friends who was a professor in sociology, the University of, what is it, Oregon, I think. So he was very good friend. So he stayed in monastery many years. He came also in the early days to CKSL once with Catherine Tenzin. So we shared a room, and so he later on, he not only translated this text and published also in I think with Multi-Law, what is it? It's Indian publisher, right? And then he made a play, I think in Karnataka State, a play, you know, about a wisdom person and ignorance person. It must be very interesting because the text is very interesting. That wisdom says to ignorance, what you apprehend doesn't even exist. Then ignorance says, yes, but people believe me because I'm here since beginner's lifetime. The habituation to me is much stronger than the habituation to you. So I win the game, you will lose. You know? And then there's this kind of debate between wisdom understanding reality and ignorance trying to eliminate its wisdom. So it's very similar. Our minds, the habituations in our mind are so strong, you know, that when we try to change the mind, those habituations, they tell you, don't do this. And they want to distract you and want to let you go back to old habits. You know? So that's often happens with people who are into the spiritual path for a long time. They know. Then the more you study emptiness, the more tiring you become. Or when you cannot sleep, just read a book about emptiness. If you have problems falling asleep in the evening, just read a book about emptiness. Then you easily fall asleep. Because our habituation patterns to ignorance are so strong. So then these agents of the matrix, they come to take you. You know. So when you want to do something about these aspects, then these agents come and make you tired or make you sleepy. So often when you talk about emptiness, then some people get very distracted all of a sudden, or they fall asleep, or they're just daydreaming. It happens very often. That why is it so? Because the habituation patterns to ignorance are so strong. So everything you want to do against it becomes difficult. But yeah, we have to understand that we have to walk against it. Yeah, so to understand that there is no inherent I to be found in your body, no inherent I to be found in your mind. Yeah, so we talk about two aspects of the mind, right? We talked about the conventional aspect of the mind, that the clear-light mind, so to say, which dawns when the mind becomes more subtle, is free of all the states. Yeah. But then also we have to relate it with the ultimate nature. And the ultimate nature of the mind means there is no self, or there is no independent consciousness to be found. Yeah, in the different moments of consciousness, you cannot find the present, for example. Right? That's if you look in the past, present, and future, even the present you can subdivide into past, present, and future. Yeah. So if you have 3 seconds of a moment of consciousness, 1, 2, 3, they say, okay, at one point of time, the second second is the present. But that second that's the present at a particular time, that also you can subdivide to 3 parts. Then the middling part of those 3 parts, you can also subdivide to 3 parts. And that middling part, you can also subdivide into 3 parts. There's no end. We cannot find an end to subdivision of consciousness. Yeah, so we often talk about in Buddhism, we talk about we don't believe in partless particles, for example. Yeah, so same in quantum mechanics, same thing. Of course, maybe when you study quantum mechanics or you read about it, they have all these little kind of electrons and protons and nice circles, give them some color and things like that. But that's not a reality, right? It's just a description, because it's just a property. So in a similar way, our mind is very similar to that. There's no real presence moment to be found. So if you look into that, you see there's this clarity of the mind, which is free of these afflictions. But even that clarity by itself is not to be found in an intrinsic or inherent or independent way. Yeah? So you know there's an experience of clarity, but what is this clarity then? Yeah, that if you really look in the present, past, and moment, past and future, even the present you can subdivide, and that present you can subdivide, that present you can subdivide, the present. So you cannot find something that is substantial. Oh, this is it, because you can always subdivide it to past, present, and future. Yeah, so you cannot really find a moment of consciousness that you say, okay, this is the present, this is it. Yeah, same with 1 hour. What is 1 hour? Or what is 1 minute? Time doesn't really exist, isn't it? Yeah, it's kind of just a concept. Time is not really there. Also, Carlo very, very clear about. Time is just imputation. Right? It's a label based on a collection of moments. There's nothing else. Yeah, there's no inherent time to be found. And so the same with continuity of consciousness, you cannot find. Or what else do you have? Bank accounts, same thing. If you have an app and your money is there in a number, there's nothing physical there. It's very interesting. There's nothing. So you can see that the money is just an imputation, right? It's just a number on your app, and there's an agreement with the bank that you own that amount, but there's nothing physical there. Yeah? But then when you lose some money, or you get some money, then you see as an inherent money, right? So so interesting that when you come to then what actually is the reality there, we see there is no inherent I to be found. There's no intrinsic consciousness to be found, right? There's no intrinsic body to be found. But what actually does exist there? That's the question. Then you come to the conclusion that's only an invitation, right? It's just the moments of consciousness over a particular period of time. We say, oh, this is consciousness. Or the body, the cells of the body being changing constantly over a particular period of time. We say, okay, this is the body. There's nothing more than that. It's just an invitation, right? Same with money in your bank account. It's just a label, but we grasp at it. That's the problem. We don't see it as a label. We grasp at it as inherent, as existing in and by itself, without dependence. Yeah, that's also true. That's also true with art. It's very interesting. I come from a country where modern art was already for decades around, but just recently, I don't know if you saw in the news. Very interesting. You buy a banana for maybe, how much is a banana these days? A few rupees? Right. 5 rupees? Yeah. Then you buy some sellotape, and then you stick it on a white background.
It's sold $1 million.
What is it? 6.2
Yes.
million. It's interesting,
Somebody
isn't
ate it.
So there's a kind of label of putting a banana with some heavy duty tape on a white background. And then you build up a nice story around it. And that's all a label, right? But then people grasp at it as, wow, this is art. Or, wow, this is amazing. And then they pay 6 point something million for it. So it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. So something that is just a label. Yeah, it's just a label. People grasp at it as inherent, right? As existing in and by itself. So interesting.
Geshe-la, someone put a pedestal
Yeah.
and a acrylic case around it, and they said that they were selling art, which was nothing,
Yeah.
and they sold it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. In the Netherlands, when I was young, then there was a TV program, not TV, radio program, where they always, make up stories and try to joke about things. So they had a little child of 4 years old, made a drawing or painting, and then build up a story around it, and then go to art specialists. And then the art specialists said, "Oh wow, this expression and this that, blah 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 blah." And then they came to an incredible kind of conclusion of that piece of art. And in the end, they said it's made by a 4-year-old. And then these art specialists was kind of they were embarrassed. And then he could only say, "Yeah, that's great talent." Yeah. So you can see that sometimes it's just a label, or you have a name, a famous name, and then people see it as concrete, inherent, existing in it by itself. Yeah, so that's true for the eye, that's true for all the things around us, but it's true for time, but you cannot really find this intrinsic aspect. So if you understand that aspect of reality, that gives you so much freedom, because if there's no grasping at an eye, then there is no self-cherishing. If there's no self-cherishing, there is no suffering. Yeah, so we often say if you go back to the wheel of sharp weapons, because I got out of out of my red line. I went to the wheel of sharp weapons, remember? Yeah. So in the wheel of sharp weapons, it talks a lot about these two aspects. There's two aspects. One is a grasping at itself, and one is a grasping at the self-cherishing attitude. Yeah, only think about yourself. Yeah, this kind of, what is it? Ego, cherishing, or self-importance. And that's related. That the stronger the grasping at an eye is, the stronger the self-cherishing attitude is. The stronger the self-cherishing attitude is, the stronger the grasping at the eye becomes. It's like a circle. Yeah. Same with afflictions like anger and obsessive desire. The stronger the ego is, the stronger the anger is. The stronger the ego is, the stronger the attachment or the things is. So clear. Yeah. I used to be incredibly uptight when I was young. I hear stories from my mother. She must have practiced patience so many occasions that I was very angry, annoying little boy. So then you fighting over the food. When my mother cooked, sometimes she cooked Brussels sprouts. We didn't fight over, but sometimes she cooked something else was nice, and then we fight over the last piece. It's so interesting. And you say, "I want this." The I comes, right, and that's then mixed with attachment. I need that food, and then the stronger the attachment is, the stronger the I becomes. And then you don't think about others. You only think about yourself. And then you get this piece, last piece, or something like that, and then it's not as tasty as it's supposed to be, right? Yeah. So you can see that there's a kind of what we call afflictions. Yeah, it afflicts the mind. Yeah, it's kind of disturbs the mind. That's in the Abhidharma. The definition of affliction is that which disturbs the peace of mind. That's very clear. So it's true with attachment, it's true with anger, and you also see that the stronger the I is, or the self-grasping is, the stronger the self-cherishing becomes. That you only think about yourself and not think about others. It's two different minds. In Buddhism, we're quite precise with which mind is causing what and what is the correlation. Yeah, so there's two aspects. There's a self-grasping attitude and a self-cherishing attitude. So the stronger the self-cherishing is, the stronger the I is, the grasping at the self. The stronger grasping at the self is, the stronger the self-cherishing is. Yeah, so, and you can see that. The people who are very narcissistic, their emotional life is very complicated. Because there's a strong sense of I, and then the afflictions become stronger. And then there's no clarity. That's why people make wrong decisions. Yeah? And that's also true even in the professional world or the corporate world, so to say. The stronger the leader is narcissistic, the more problems that arise in the team. Very clear. So also this book I mentioned many times now, the book published. the potential project, right? This incredible research done with Harvard Business Review reports, very interesting. That to be a successful leader, you have to have selflessness. And to be a successful leader, you have to have mindfulness. To be a successful leader, you have to have compassion. And the 3 pillars for success. This kind of a 35,000 interview-based research. Now they published recently a new book called Compassionate Leader. The previous book was The Mind of a Leader. Very interesting science. And that's now you can see in the corporate world, there's interest in these things. I go to Google sometimes in London, Google Cloud, head office in London, and I have some friends there. And yeah, I give some talks sometimes. People completely understand that. Very interesting. That if you're more compassionate, if you think about others, then you can communicate with others, right? What we call emotion intelligence. Emotion intelligence is much more important than just being intelligent. It's very clear. Yeah, the science that last, 2 decades, people came to the conclusion you have to be emotional intelligent, not just intelligent. Because if you're just intelligent and you're narcissistic, then it can be very destructive for yourself and for people in your team. Work. Yeah, so you can see not only the Buddha talked about it 2,500 years ago, but also the science very clear. Yeah, people health issues, people with more identification with self-concern, they have much higher scores in high blood pressure, inclination to heart diseases, depression, low self-esteem. This is kind of hardcore science, right? It's very, very well documented. Yeah. So then the Buddha said, don't do that. Yeah. So, and then if you see there is no I, there's so much freedom. His own Dalai Lama says that very often. And then his own says, if you contemplate emptiness like 16 times a day, which is quite often, then it looks like afflictions do not arise. Yeah, so that's very interesting, because it looks like afflictions do not arise, because if you think about emptiness, the mind becomes, first of all, a little bit more subtle. And then you see there is no inherent I to be found. And if you see there's no inherent I, then the afflictions will become less. If the afflictions become less, there's less disturbance of the mind, because the definition of afflictions is that it will disturb the peace of mind. So if that's the case, then there's more happiness. So based on that kind of logic, then you try to understand how other people actually are suffering. And so we often think about ourselves, but for us, wanting happiness and not wanting suffering is exactly the same as a person who's sitting next to us is exactly the same. The people we don't know and we meet on the street, exactly the same. People on the whole planet, even animals, exactly the same. Yeah? They want happiness and don't want suffering. Yeah. If you pet a cat or dog, they don't run away. Yeah. But if you shout at a dog or cat, they don't want to stay close. Very clear, right? So even animals or a mosquito, when the mosquito comes, and you don't think about a mosquito, you don't think about your own body or the sound they make. So then the mosquito knows that danger, go. Right? So even as small as a mosquito, they want happiness and don't want suffering. They escape suffering. Yeah, so it's very clear. So if you really understand that all beings have exactly the same strength in the wish of wanting happiness, not wanting suffering, then you start to think, oh, and how is their suffering caused? Same for me, with this grasping an I. And then you look at their mind, and their mind is the most pure aspect of the mind is exactly the same as your pure aspect of your mind. The clear-eyed mind you have is exactly the same as the clear-eyed mind of somebody else. But then around that clear-eyed mind, so go back to the planet Earth, remember? Earth is a paradise. For the time being, think like that. And there's all this space junk circling around. Yeah? Then if you're in the space junk, you cannot really experience the paradise. So if we're in the space junk of the afflictions, we cannot really experience the nature of the mind, right? So then other people exactly the same. Yeah, their clear-line mind and your clear-line mind, there's no difference. It's exactly the same nature. It's like the blue sky, your blue sky mind and their blue sky mind. There's no difference there. The only difference there is because their actions and your actions, we have subjective forms of experience. We have different kind of kasa, different kind of activities done. And that's why we experience things differently. It's very clear, right? If you go, there used to be more trees in Bangalore early days, but yeah. But now there's less. Yeah. But if you go to what is it, Carbon Park? You went there last week or a few weeks ago. Carbon Park, I think it's the biggest park in Bangalore, is it?
Namdak is-
Namdak. Okay, Namdak. I've been there many years ago. Yeah, so if you go to a beautiful park, or you go out of Bangalore, making it more beautiful. You go to the countryside, you know, in Kerala or something, you know, or you come to Serra and you see lakes and nice trees, and it's not too hot, and you sit there and you think, oh, nice, you know. So you sit there, and then you sit with a friend who's depressed. The way things appear to your mind and the way things appear to your friend's mind is completely different, right? Yeah, so you see, there's a subjective experience. So same for us, although the clear-eyed mind of you and the clear-eyed mind of your friend is exactly the same. But then they have all this junk around it, and that's the difference. So in the Uttara Tantra, there's one text, Sangha, in Uttara Tantra, it explains like the mind is like a jewel, you know. So that jewel is covered with dirt. You can think about filth around a jewel. But the filth is not a part of the jewel, right? Yeah. The jewel remains the jewel. So if you take away the filth, then the jewel starts shining. But that shining potential is always there, even if the dirt is around that jewel, right? So your jewel of your mind and the jewel of the mind of somebody else is exactly the same. It's just the dirt around this is different. So it's very interesting if you look into that. Very interesting. Because then we talked about, if a person says something nasty to you, then it's not really the words that gives you suffering, it's your reaction that gives the suffering, right? So interesting. Because we never make mistakes. Other people always make mistakes. Yeah. And when we're unhappy, it's not us, it's their fault.
Yes.
Right? That's how we think. Yeah. When we're unhappy, it's this person or that person or this situation or that situation. It's not us. No. But that's completely wrong. Yeah. So to understand that, we talk about karma. You see? So you have this Jew-like mind. Okay? Then around that Jew-like mind is this dirt of karma and afflictions, as we call it. Yeah? So then you have an argument with somebody. So what happens? You meet that person. You don't meet with the clear mind of that person. Your clear mind doesn't meet with that clear mind. But your dirt meets with the dirt of that person. That's what happens. You know? And then it's like I use it lately, but it's not an authentic example, but yeah, I find it easy to relate to. So it's like a jigsaw puzzle, you know, puzzles. In the early days, you have a few thousand and you have to put it. You're done. You know, right? You do it on a boring Sunday afternoon or something. Yeah. So the goes fits together perfectly. So then when your dirt meets the dirt of somebody else and there's an argument, it's exactly what happens. Your karma and the karma of that person completely fits together. And then there's an argument. But then we say it's their fault, but it's not, it's a condition. Because that's just one part of the jigsaw puzzle. And there's a part from your side, you see? So that means that whatever things we experience is not out there, right? It's just a relation between condition and your own aspect of the jigsaw puzzle, or your karma and afflictions. So, but then you see, okay, there's a dirt, eating that dirt, but the clear mind of that person, clear mind of my mind is exactly the same. And so then you start to see, oh, the argument is just a adventitious temporary thing. Because if you take the dirt away from your mind, you take dirt away from that person, you have just two pure minds, nothing else. You see, it's very interesting. So then you start to see that other people are suffering because they don't have control over their minds, and they don't have control over karma and afflictions, like you. So if you see that aspect, then it's much easier to generate compassion for them. Because you know deep down below, that person also wants to experience this clear mind. Right? Everybody wants to have happiness, doesn't want suffering. But just temporarily, they're just in the dirt or in the clouds, as you yourself, you know. So then, from the point of view of compassion, it can become much stronger. The more you understand these points, the more you see there's no I and there's no them. The more you see that your clean out mind and their clean out mind is exactly the same, it's just the dirt around it is slightly different, then you start to recognize that there is no really difference between us and them. Right? Yeah, so then you can generate equanimity. Normally we talk about equanimity or kasa. You all know, right? 7 cause and effect, or friend, stranger, enemy, and equalize them, or the equanimity of exchanging self for others, that you wanting happiness and they wanting happiness exactly the same, you know. There's 2 types of equanimity, but if you generate equanimity according to the, understanding of Uttara Tantra, it's very interesting. Because then you see that your clean out mind and their clean out mind is exactly the same. The only difference there is the information you carry and the information they are carrying. What we call karma, right? And the afflictions in your mind, the habituation patterns in your mind, and the habituation patterns in the mind of that person. That's the difference. Yeah, because often we're overpowered by an affliction, and then we say, "Oh, sorry, I made a mistake." Or when the person is drunk, I sometimes meet people on the streets in London. One of my friends, he walks a lot with homeless people, and yeah, sometimes they use all kind of substances and they say all kind of crazy things. But then when they say these nasty things to you, the person is under influence. It doesn't matter. It doesn't harm you because the person is drunk or uses substance or something like that. So you think, oh, it doesn't matter, right? But in a similar way, if this other person is angry at you, it's just similar to being drunk. It's just being overpowered by the anger, that the person says something nasty to you, and it's just this junk around that beautiful jewel that is the problem. It's not the person that's the problem, you see. So then you start to understand these aspects, and then it doesn't matter what a person says, because that person is also not in control. Yeah, if you're always in this dirt of the mind and afflictions and karma, then so that helps so much. If you're able to do that, then you start to realize it's not the words that harm you, it's your reaction that really harms. Yeah, because you can develop your mind and people can say whatever they like. Namzo Rinpoche used to take that aspect. Namzo Rinpoche, he would never ever care about what people think. When he was teaching in in the monastic institutions, it was very traditional, and things are structured, and teachers normally start with a quote and explain, and then they go to a text step by step. Namzo Rinpoche, completely out of the blue, teaches something completely different, and then time doesn't matter. It goes on for hours and hours and hours. I remember my first teachings, Namzo Rinpoche, in 1993 in the Netherlands. I was completely new to Buddhism, and sitting cross-legged was so tiring, so painful, because we always sit in chairs, right? In the West. Now we're sitting on chairs, painful. When I sit and travel by train long time or bus or a plane, then I have to sit on a chair, and then it's so painful after a few hours. So just habituation. But that time I remember it was so painful in my knees, because we never sit cross-legged, in the early days. But yeah, Rinpoche went on and on and on, all night long. But Rinpoche never really cared what other people thought, only thought about what's most beneficial, right? So, so if you have that kind of attitude, give up this self-cherishing, or what we call the eight worldly dharmas, then there's no real suffering. So whatever people say, how they act towards you, it doesn't harm you. Right? So that's very interesting. You know, Shantideva in the Bodhisattva way of life, he says, remain like a piece of wood. You know, that when other people get very into kasa, afflictions and things like that, then if you follow, then it becomes a problem. But if you remain like a piece of wood, it doesn't mean you like a overcooked vegetable in the corner or something, or or doormat. You know, it's not like that. It's kind of mental state that is in control and peaceful and kind of patient. You know, and then you can do so much more in meetings, or if you keep your mind calm, you can control things much better. If you control your own mind, you can control others much better. Right? Very clear. So same you see in animal realm. I always use the example of the street dogs, because in India you can learn so much from the street dogs. Very clear. Yesterday I arrived at Bangalore railway station. It's very interesting. Sadapti Express from Mysore to Bangalore, 2 hours. So then I came on the railway station, and then there was one person with a dog, you know, golden retriever or something. This, you know, it's nice. They're kind of the kind dogs, right? Like the bulldogs or something like that. These kind of dogs, right? Yeah. And there were a few stray dogs, and then the street dogs were fighting and barking and trying to attack, because it's their area. And this dog is not allowed to be here. But the humans, they don't care. But with a dog, no. You see, it's so interesting. You can see the emotions are very similar. Because in war these days, you see the same thing. Our territory, you want more, blah, blah, blah. And fighting and others, you know. It's so stupid. It's very similar. And that way, some humans, they're exactly the same as animals. Sorry to say that, but yeah, sometimes like that. So then the stray dogs, sometimes you have a group of stray dogs and a new dog comes, and the new dog comes and doesn't bark. It just looks. Wakes it still. And these dogs, like, they start barking, sniff, sniff, sniff. And before you know it, they play together. Yeah, so you can see, even in the animal realm, if you have your mind peaceful and, you know, like that, then the reaction is completely different from others. You see? So that's if you subdue your own mind, you can subdue others, right? If you get very uptight in a meeting and other people uptight, everybody uptight, and then it becomes a mess. You know? But if there's 2, 3 people very uptight, and you keep your mind calm and you say to the other people, yeah, you're right. You know they're wrong, but you say you're right. Then they calm down, and then you explain and try to correct them. Yeah. So the skillful means that seems to work. You know? So then you can see when other people get negative towards you, is just affliction. That's the problem. It's not the person. So the more you understand their clear-eyed mind and your clear-eyed mind, exactly the same. But their obscuration of common afflictions, your obscuration of common afflictions, this dirt around the jewel, that makes a difference. And then the jigsaw puzzle, if you think about those aspects, you can see it's much easier to generate equanimity. That's why His Holiness says often to generate equanimity, according to Shantideva's, 6th chapter of reasoning, there is no I and there's no them. Then you know there is equanimity is much more profound. Yeah, we have the equanimity of friend, stranger, and enemy, but there's a much more profound one. Yeah, equanimity based on understanding ultimate reality. Yeah, so the more you understand ultimate reality, the equanimity becomes very profound and much stronger. Yeah, and then also the compassion becomes stronger. Yeah? So as we started with the different quotes, that if you understand there is no I and no them, then the self grasping at the self becomes less. If the grasping at the self, or the self grasping becomes less, then the self cherishing attitude becomes less. If the self-cherishing attitude becomes less, then the obstacle to its bodhicitta becomes less, or the obstacle to its compassion becomes less. Yeah, so we know that self-cherishing attitude is a cause to prevent us from generating compassion, loving kindness, and bodhicitta. So to counteract self-cherishing, that's why we engage in Tonglen practice. Yeah, the mind training of taking suffering of others and giving your own happiness to others. So that proves, in exchanging self for others method, that one aspect is you want to generate more compassion. The other aspect, you want to generate more love and kindness. And that's been done by this visualization, as well as counteracting the obstacle to compassion and love and kindness. And this obstacle is a self-cherishing attitude. Yeah, so if you can counteract self-cherishing attitude, you will counteract the kasa. You counteract the obstacle for compassion. And that's what it says. Also, Chandakirti in his, Manimika Avatara, in the beginning, very clearly indicates that there's different types of compassion. Yeah. And the most profound form of compassion is the compassion that's in the mind of a person who has realized emptiness. If you realize emptiness, your compassion is very different. Yeah, so Chandakirti indicates 3 types of compassion, right? In this text, yeah, supplement to the middle way, that there's a compassion of merely a wish for us to be free of suffering. That's one compassion. The second compassion is the compassion in the mind of a person who has realized subtle impermanence. Yeah, if you have realized subtle impermanence, then you know that things are in the nature of change. If you contemplate a lot of impermanence, you almost automatically, easily to generate renunciation of samsara. Yeah? Because if you really understand that nothing is lasting, the happiness is not lasting, your achievements in life are not lasting, your body is not lasting, everything is just, every moment is going. You know? So I find it very helpful if you listen, you hear songs from the 80s, sometimes you hear songs, the 80s. Not to go up in the song and start singing, then there's no point. But if you hear the song, you think, oh, that time is gone, right? So there is no lasting happiness in samsara, right? Whenever you have a little bit of happiness, it goes. Yeah, when you have a friendship, it goes. When you're healthy for some time, it goes. When you're mentally strong, sometimes it goes. Yeah, so if if you have already a few gray hairs, then it's going down the hill. That's the reality. Yeah. That the body and the mind is just is just degenerating, right? That's after a certain age is not going to get better. So that's a reality, right? We all face. So then the more you contemplate that, the more you understand the suffering of samsara, right? That things are not lasting, everything is changing. And you cannot grasp and hold on to things because things will change. The more you grasp, the more suffering there is. If you want to grasp at things that do not last, then the grasping itself creates a lot of suffering, right? So if you, same during the pandemic, there was one person, I think, died close to the Changyang Center. The ambulance was there. I think was dying or process, and then the woman said, I think the man was dying. So her husband, I think, said, "Oh, you cannot go now." So that's so interesting. You cannot go now. Of course, that is not waiting till we finish our tasks. That is not waiting till you're done and then say, okay, now I'm ready, now I'm done on my things. It's never like that. So that's nature reality. That reality should be understood. If you don't understand the reality, there's suffering. Carlo Rovelli, I mentioned many times before, is kind of a theoretical physicist, quantum mechanics, particularly quantum gravity, one of my most favorite physicists. Also, we had a very interesting dialogue. developed into a course, but Color Valley in his book on time says, very interesting, he says, fear for death. He's a physicist, right? He says, fear for death is a fault in evolution. Why would you fear something that's a reality? It's very interesting. That's going to happen, you know, to us, to our family and friends and things like that. But if you grasp at not to happen, then you fighting against reality. If you fight against reality, then you're gonna lose, because you cannot win from reality. Reality remains a reality. Yeah, so the more you fight, the more you lose, the more you suffer. Yeah, so that's very clear. You know? So then the more you contemplate that and impermanence, you really see that nothing is lasting, you know, that our happiness is not lasting, our sometimes our health is not lasting, our mental states are not lasting, you know, everything is just going. Yeah, a good period in your life, and you look back, it's gone. Period is gone, it doesn't come back. Yeah, so then you see that everything is in this nature of being transcendent, kind of, you know, casa, you know, is going, you know. So if you understand that reality, then you can generate renunciation much better, right? And if you understand the suffering of samsara because of that, then you see that all beings are actually suffering moment by moment. And so you look at people, you think, oh, they're okay, but actually they're not. When I was in Bulgaria last year, you know, in Bulgaria, most of you maybe been there. You can see in India sometimes quite clear, right? There's a set people living on the street, there's one limb missing, you know, just crawling over the street, asking for money, or you see the little goats waiting to be slaughtered. You know, you just see it straight face. So there's a lot of suffering. So then I was in a rickshaw with two people from the West who were quite new, I think, to the area, to Buddhism. And they told me, do you not get overwhelmed by all this? You see that all the time. So I said, you know, look at the rickshaw driver on the other side. He was singing, he was cheerful. I said, look at him. You know, exactly the same as the goats. It's kind of temporarily, this person is okay. Because temporarily, person is cheerful and things like that. But underneath the surface, the person also has karma to be born everywhere, you know, to have all kinds of suffering. And that happiness the person is temporarily experiencing can be gone like that. Can have an accident or lose everything. So you can see that the more you understand impermanence, the stronger your understanding of suffering is, and then the stronger the compassion becomes. Because on the compassion without understanding suffering doesn't really work. So then that compassion is stronger if you have a realization of subtle impermanence, is stronger than the compassion of mere suffering. Yeah. So the second compassion, what Chandagishti indicates, the compassion in the mind that has realized subtle impermanence is much stronger. Yeah. If you know that everything is going to change, you're going to die, and you go reborn, and same thing over and over again. You know. So my father, I met when I was home. We didn't know my father had cancer already. He was coughing, but didn't know had lung cancer. Only when I left a few weeks later, they diagnosed. So, but I was talking with my father. My father never showed that much externally interest in spirituality, but internally he was thinking, you know. And then he had a difficult, the last few years, lost his job just before pension, things like that, and things didn't go well at the work, and so a bit difficult. So then we talked about past, future lifetimes, things like that. Came up in one conversation, and then he said, "Do I have to experience this over again?" It's very interesting. See, so the more you see that aspect, the stronger you start to understand the suffering, right? So the stronger you understand the suffering of yourself, then the stronger you understand the suffering of others. So the impermanence helps us to understand suffering, and then compassion becomes stronger. Yeah, that is Chandrakirti indicating. Yeah. And then Chandrakirti goes a step further and says the compassion in the mind, the continuity of a person who has realized emptiness, is even much more profound. Because if you understand emptiness, you understand there is no inherent I from your side, there's no inherent I from the other side. So equanimity is much easier to generate, right? Then equanimity is easy to generate. On top of that, you also know why sentient beings are suffering, because they grasp to this I, and because of that, there's stronger self-grasping, and because the self-grasping is stronger, that's why beings have a stronger self-cherishing attitude. That's why people have stronger form of afflictions like anger and obsessive desire, and that's why they create so causes for suffering. And so that's one aspect. The other aspect is, you know, that if this ignorance has been taken away, right, then only the jewel remains, right? The ultimate nature of the mind remains. So then you see from one angle, you see why people are suffering. And from the other point of view, you see you can do something about it. So that constructive compassion is very important. Yeah? It kind of pity feeling is not of any benefit. Yeah, His Holiness, when was it last Thursday? We went to Tashilumbo, we did prayers for the victims of the earthquake in Tibet. And then His Holiness very clearly said that just feel sad about what happened is not a benefit. It's very true. You know, we see things on the news and we think, oh, we get sad and worry and this, that. But it doesn't benefit you, and it doesn't benefit the situation, it doesn't benefit people. That's what someone said. It's sad, of course it's sad. But to be stuck with that, it doesn't benefit. So then someone said we have to move forward. That is karma, that's related with experience of previous actions. That's a result, and there's suffering, and it's not nice. That's the reality of samsara. So we have to do something to get out of it. So we have to practice, and in particular, Islam is indicated to practice virtue, yeah, and then to put efforts into bodhicitta and emptiness. Because if you look at that, then you have this courageous attitude. That's the reality. There are suffering. I am suffering. Other people are suffering. But at least I'm gonna do something. That's this courageous compassion, which is based on this insight of wisdom. As we often say, in Tibetan, there's a saying, so this is often recognized that Janjuk, Janjuk, Semjana Mik, yeah, so it means the compassion or bodhicitta is focused upon sentient beings, and the wisdom is focused upon enlightenment. Yeah, so you generate compassion for others, but it's a constructive form of compassion because you know you're going to do something about it. Yeah, it's not just a pity feeling or suffering. Is you understand the suffering, but also you know you can do something about it, and you're gonna do something about it. Yeah, so that's this third type of compassion that understands ultimate reality, and of course the best one is to realize emptiness. But for us, similarity to that is to understand ultimate reality, to understand why people are suffering, but also to understand that we can do something about it. Yeah, and that is a very strong constructive form of compassion. And also, as certain people did a lot of research regarding these points in the healthcare. Yeah, Eve Ekman, for example, together with Paul Ekman, they working on emotion. Probably they finished, I don't know, actually. Emotionally mapping the mind.
Atlas of emotions.
Yeah, done, right? Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent. Yeah. So,
Geshe-la, what's the first compassion?
the first compassion is the compassion of Kaza. Focus upon the suffering of others, the wish for others to be free of suffering. The second compassion is also a wish for us to be free of suffering, but in the continuity of a person who has realized subtle impermanence. Yeah. So if you have subtle impermanence realized, understood, then your compassion is stronger because you see the momentary suffering. And then the best, more superior compassion, that is the third one, is the compassion with understanding of emptiness, or even better, the realization of emptiness. Yeah. So, because then you know why beings are suffering, but also you know you can do something about it. Yeah, so that's kind of what His Holiness often emphasized, this courageous kind of attitude, this heroic kind of attitude. So it's very needed. And then what His Holiness also indicated, His Holiness is so encouraging. His Holiness says, I'm old, I'm almost 90, and I'm going to live according to predictions and dreams to 110, 130. And until I die, I'm just going to work hard until I die. That's it. And next lifetime I continue. That's kind of this courageous mind. If you have that kind of courageous mind, it doesn't matter if you die halfway through. You just continue. In the monastery, sometimes we have monks who come from Tibet in the early days, and they're old. They're like 60 or something, or 70, and they just start with a program, and they die within a few years. And then they say, okay, at least I started with something, so next life I continue. Yeah, it's very interesting. Kind of vast vision, it's so clear. So that's this courageous attitude. If you have that courageous attitude, then next lifetime you meet these teachings again, you do the same thing, you do that for a few lifetimes, and things become stable, right? Yeah, that's advice I always got from teachers from Michigan, when I was a bit down, or I want to give up the studies after, it's 20 years of study. Then he always said, Namdak, you just study for a decade or two, you put in practice for a decade or two, you do that for a few lifetimes, and then things become stable. The realization. Yes, I mean, it makes sense, right? Yeah. So that's this incredible, powerful, vast vision, courageous attitude. Then you don't have to worry. Then you die, and then you just continue next lifetime. Of course, different body, but so what? Come, have so many bodies already. Yeah. Okay, maybe we stop there before lunch. Is there any questions? You had one? Or was solved? Yeah.
These are two questions. We will start off with the first one. We were talking about self, right? And you were asking to find it in your body.
Yeah.
So with body, it becomes a little bit easier, but with
Mind,
consciousness,
yeah.
it does look like self, because though we understand that it's changing, but consciousness is one thing where it has all my imprints, and I'm trying to purify that that consciousness itself. So it really looks like the
That's
self.
me.
That's me.
Yeah, it's also Buddhist views who actually say that that is you, right? In the one school called the Svatantrika Madhyamaka school, right? And below that they all say that's you. The illustration of the person is this mental consciousness that goes from this to the next level. This is a very common view, even in Buddhist philosophy. But then the Prasangika then say, but where is this consciousness then? Because you can see there is no inherent self somewhere separate from that consciousness as an entity that is controlling your body and your mind. You see, that's not there. But then you think this consciousness is you. And then you think this consciousness exists from its own side. Right? And then the Prasangika said the consciousness exists, but it does not exist from its own side, because you cannot find an inherent consciousness anywhere if you look in the moments. Yeah, so that's a kind of little bit of subtler view. Yeah, that you see there is consciousness, but not a consciousness that is findable in the sense of existing in and by itself. So that's kind of an aspect that goes a bit subtler than the previous schools, so to say. Yeah. Second. Yeah.
Even with karma, the first one is a little easier to grasp. How we have this energy, the imprints, potentialities from so many beginningless lifetimes. But how does it manifest? Can we understand it scientifically a little bit? Okay, we have these imprints in the consciousness, but when it meets the condition, how does it manifest? How do we understand that a little bit scientifically as well?
Yeah, so then you have to look in things like wave function, information theories, for example. Then it becomes very interesting. And in particular, I think if you relate it with David Bohm's interpretation of the implicate order, for example, it's very interesting that there is this underlying reality we cannot really measure, but it has an influence on what we can measure. So what he calls hidden variables, or this implicate order. Yeah. So karma is probably very similar. It's an information field, you would say, that is not, according to certain interpretations, is not matter, is not consciousness. So it becomes very complicated. Yeah. So this information of what we call karma is momentary changing, because otherwise it could not interact with cause and conditions, right? So it's momentary changing, it's impermanent, yeah, but it's not matter or something physical, neither is it consciousness. So that makes it a little bit more complicated, right? So then these potentials, they with us because this correlation of dependence, same as the space junk cannot leave the atmosphere because of the gravity. So in one way, there's a relation with this information and your continuity of consciousness, you would say. So what that actually is very complex. Yeah, because we're talking about hidden aspects of reality. We cannot see, we cannot measure, but people with clairvoyance, they see the correlations. So for us, these points are difficult, 2 reasons. We don't have realized emptiness. Yeah, because if you have realized emptiness, your understanding of cause and effect and fate in karma becomes stronger. And we lack in clairvoyance. Yeah, so if you don't have certain levels of clairvoyance, then these aspects of karma are very complicated. If you look at one very moving video by Mahaboa. Mahaboa is a monk of the Thai forest tradition. Yeah, so I think if you search the weeping Mahaboa, I think. So it's very interesting. He doesn't have a reason to lie. It's very moving. It's kind of 40 minutes video, I think. Mahaboa.
Mahaboa.
Yeah. Yeah. Boa, B-O-W-A, I think. Mahaboa. So the weeping or crying Mahaboa is very interesting. In the Thai tradition, mostly lay people, they offer lunch, right, to the monks. And then after the lunch, there's a Dharma talk. So in this Dharma talk, he said he never talked about before. You know? But then one lady in the audience was asking about that and what happened after, and things like that. So then he started to talk about his personal experience in meditation. He must have, for sure, have different samadhis of calm abiding, for sure. And then probably also some insight or realization in selflessness or emptiness, right? The way he talks. So then he says at one point of time he was in meditative equipoise and the mind was so luminous, so clear, you know. So he must have extraordinarily strong concentration. Then he moved out of that concentration, and if you have calm abiding, right, your mind becomes like a mirror. You know, everything reflects. So then he looked in his previous lifetimes, you know, because he could see. And not only could he see previous lifetimes, but he saw the correlation between a particular act in a particular lifetime and the result of that act. So then if you have these types of clairvoyance, then you understand this aspect of karma, because it's, for us ordinary beings, very difficult to understand. It's kind of a hidden variable, right? So then he focused upon the karma of others or other people's lifetimes. And then he generated really strong compassion. Because then he started to see how people are born in different spheres of samsara and what are the reasons for that, the causes. So that's a very moving video that a person with clairvoyance has this insight. So until then it's just complicated for us. Yeah. But this person didn't have a reason to lie. The Buddha didn't have a reason to lie. Lama Zopa Rinpoche sometimes is very used to have very clear insights into obstacles or subtle karma. So until that clairvoyance is being generated, then it's just for us just looking into the dark, you know. Yeah. But that's information, same. So if you relate it with the hyperdementia theory, it's very interesting. Because for you, what happened in 1996 on the 13th of It is 12th of January 2000, then 1996, at 1 o'clock, 10 past 1. You don't remember. But that does not mean that information is not there. Because when you get clairvoyance, you can remember it. You see? Same with a person who has hyperdementia. That person can remember that. So that information is accessible. For us, it's not accessible, but it does not mean it's not there. So that information is safe, is not matter, it's not something physical, and it's not consciousness. It is a reality that exists. You know? So I think the theory of memory and hyperdementia in particular is very similar to the workings of karma, because you talk about a perception that comes to an end, that information is left, and it can be remembered. With karma, an action comes to an end, and that action can come to ripening by cause and condition. It's a very similar kind of process. Yeah, but it takes a bit more time. Because in our Buddhist tradition, mostly when you read the Lamrim, the karma is explained according to the Abhidharma, right? But most people, they lacking the philosophy of the Prasangika. So if you read the Prasangika interpretation of karma, it becomes very interesting. Because then it becomes information theory. And then I had many dialogues with biologists and people like Carlo Rovelli and Anil Seth. And then these points starts to make a lot of sense. And then they say, oh, that sounds very scientific. You know, so yeah, that just takes a little bit more work in philosophy and science, I suppose. Yeah.
I've heard this term used, archaic records. So archaic means in the sky. Literally, it's a Sanskrit thing. So and the records of it, everything which has ever happened and how you deep. This is perhaps a similar idea.
It's similar idea, but not in the sky. It's basically also similar what Aaron Schrödinger says, you know, one of the physicists in quantum mechanics, in his book, What is Life? He says information is stored in non-locality.
In what?
Non-locality. So that is very interesting, because David Bohm also talks about hidden variables, and in Buddhism we say this information is not matter, it's not physical, so it doesn't have a location. So that interpretation of Aaron Schrödinger is very interesting, that it's non-locality. So that's very similar as we talk about in Buddhism.
Is that also the way one can visualize the Dharmakaya?
Yeah, Dharmakaya is very similar because it's everywhere. There's no locality. Consciousness, for that regard, is also non-local. According to one of the world-leading experts in the near-death experience, Pim van Lommel, the Dutch cardiologist, we also had a very nice dialogue. His research is the best designed near-death experience research until the present. Yeah, very well designed. Even in the Lancet, he got a very good review, although the near-death experience is very controversial research in mainstream science. But in the Lancet, he got a very good review. But so what Pim van Lommel also is saying is that consciousness is non-local. Because when it becomes extremely subtle, at the time of death, when a person has a cardiac arrest, within 10 to 20 seconds, the oxygen flow to the brain stops. And according to mainstream neuroscience, they say, last firing of the neurons, people see all kinds of things. But it's not seeing all kinds of things, because it's very structured what people see. And it's common, and people see the same things. So it's not just random firing of neurons. On top of that, 84 to 93%, depends on which research you depend upon, what people perceive in an out-of-the-body experience during near-death experience is valid. They know exactly where the doctor put their glasses or the dentist, or what the doctor was doing, exercise before operating, or even what the doctor was saying. There was one surgeon who tried to get this person back to life and was doing CPR on the person, and it said, "Come back, you bastard," you know? And then this person who was on the operation table, he saw and heard that, you know, he was dead. But his subtle consciousness, which does not depend on the physical brain, because the brain is dead at that time, said later on to the surgeon, said, "Please, watch your words. Because we said this and this and this, it's not nice. And said, how did you know? You were dead. Yeah. So it's very interesting science that there are forms of consciousness that was not measurable at that time, according to the current possibility. So according to medical science, it's not possible. So when Pim van Lommen was a cardiologist, quite a famous one actually, he saw this event happening again and again. Then he thought, this we never learned in medical school, this is not possible. And then he started to examine it. And then he did a few years research on it. Very interesting. And he comes to the conclusion that consciousness is non-local, because it doesn't really, not all types of consciousness depend on the physical brain. So there are, especially sensory perceptions, that very much depend on the physical brain. We can prove that very easily. But the subtler the consciousness becomes, the less dependence it looks like on the brain. Yeah.
Coming back to compassion.
Yeah.
I think I struggle with trying to develop compassion for people. I mean, you can look at the grooming gangs in UK or
Yeah.
Giselle Pellicott, who was
Yeah.
raped by 70 men. I find it extremely hard to develop compassion with those people.
Yeah.
Because it seems like I'm condoning their actions.
Yeah.
So I guess what is the right way to practice there?
Yeah. So it's not that the actions I would say the actions remains improper, right? Even according to the Buddhist interpretation. Yeah. It's harming them, it's harming others. It should not be done. Very clear. But when we have a situation like that, and you cannot do anything about it, and you're stuck in that situation, then you have only your mind left. And then it's more constructive for your mind to have compassion rather than getting angry at the person. So in a similar way, I always use the examples of people in occupied Tibet, right? Who are being, not just raped or tortured for a few times, but years at a time. And almost going without food and really very, very intense torture, physical, mentally. And there are beings like that who come out of prison, and they don't have any negative thoughts towards the persons who did it to them. That does not mean they justify those actions. Those actions remain improper, right? And something should be done about it, if possible. But if you're in that situation and you're tortured and you cannot do anything about it, then to have compassion for the people who's torturing you is very constructive. Because the person who's torturing you actually creates more causes for suffering for themselves and for others. Right? So then you see that people who come out of those very difficult situations, right, being tortured in prison or raped even, so there's nuns like that, men like that in occupied Tibet, then they don't really have a post-traumatic stress disorder when they come out. And that's scientifically been examined. Why is that so? Why are these, not all Tibetans, but big number of Tibetans who are being tortured and very difficult situations in prison, they come out, but they don't have a post-traumatic stress disorder. So why is that and how is that possible? That does not mean to justify the actions of the Chinese, what they do to the Tibetans, but your reaction to it, not to mental suffer from it. That's the very powerful tool. And that's why compassion, it's two aspects. One aspect is the person mentally is very strong. Yeah. And the other aspect is that the person understands that what I said before is this jigsaw puzzle. There is a condition from their side, but also we have created certain karmas, right? Same as this Owen said, the earthquake in Tibet, the same thing, right? That it is karma related. So when His Holiness was asked this question, how is it possible that people in those extremely difficult circumstances, being tortured, always on the edge of dying, they come out and they don't have PTSD, no post-traumatic stress disorder? Well, how is that possible? Then His Holiness gave two answers, two possibilities. One, he said, they understand the law of cause and effect. Yeah, they understand that certain aspects are related with causal relationships. And the other aspect is compassion. That they generate compassion for the people who did it to them, because those who do it to them, they are drunk by afflictions. Right? They're drunk by afflictions, anger, or sometimes attachments. And if you don't look in various lifetimes, then these things are very difficult to comprehend. But if you think since beginner's lifetime, we've done all kind of things to others, and that's a ripening effect of that. If you don't think about that, then these kind of explanations doesn't make any sense. Yeah, has nothing to do with justifying violence at all. If you can do something about it, you should do it. You should stop people from harming others. That's, of course, that should be done. Yeah, but what you do mentally to those situations, then compassion can be very instructive. So that's kind of, I think, why these trainings are being explained. Yeah, when we say, Shantideva says, if you have a problem and you can solve the problem, you should solve it and not worry about it, but solve the problem. If you have a problem but you cannot solve it, then also you shouldn't worry about it because you cannot solve it anyway. So in those circumstances, if you cannot change people's behavior and you're just stuck into it, then you only have your mind left, right? And then in those circumstances, compassion can be extremely constructive. But still, you know that they shouldn't do this, and there should be something should be done about it. But mentally, it's very courageous.
But not get afflicted by it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you see also in meetings when there's a few people getting angry and it's heated up meeting, and if you keep your mind calm, then they might settle down. And first you say they're right, you know they're wrong, but to calm their mind, and then later on you try to correct them. It's a skill for me, right? To on the long term to be of more benefit, to change them and to change the situation, right? Yeah. Okay. There was lunch is happening.
Yes, it'll be around in the next 10 minutes.
Next 10 minutes. Okay. Is there another question? Then we can just fill the time. People online, you okay? Your lunch is not overcooking or something. Yeah. Or burning.
Yeah. The philosophy of cause and effect, I
Yeah.
want to understand if I am recognizing a suffering that I'm going through in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Does it mean that I caused the same suffering to someone else in my last lifetime?
Not your last one, but one of your previous ones. Yeah.
And it's the same, like if I lose someone that
Yeah. It's not that straightforward, right? If you, for example, if you kill John in your previous lifetime, John is reborn as Peter and then kills you in this time. Karma is very complex, right? It's kind of, you have so much information in that. You know computer models? Yeah. So I used to study hydrology. So we make computer models for water flows, right? You have input and you have the texture of the soil and organic material or not, or at different levels, and then you put in water here, and then you calculate how much in which period of time comes out on the other side. Yeah. So if you have this block, this cubic kind of whatever it is, yeah, the more variables there are, and if they influence each other, it becomes a very complex system. Yeah, in the early days, I remember it was 1990, was it 94? The computer I had was not very powerful. So these days it's probably like that. But those days I had to set it on calculating in the evening, and the next morning hope it didn't crash at night. Then I got some data, But yeah, so things become very complex the more variables there are, right? So it's not like what I saw once. Once I was, I think it was a Kannada movie when I came from. In the early days, they still have it in buses. With less, maybe. Still have the movies in the bus.
It's more personalized now.
Oh yeah, people do see that. Yeah. So in the early days, I remember I was doing my prayers in the bus, and the noise was so loud of the movie that you couldn't prevent yourself from looking at the screen a little bit, when I do the prayers. And there was this movie that their mother was kidnapped, by a gang or something, and then the two brothers were killed by this gang, and very dramatic, sound, and then they're holding their hands and they were killed, and And then the next lifetime they came back as two brothers. And then
Arjun, popular movie.
is it? Ale? So
Karan Arjun, Shah Rukh Khan and Salman
Okay.
Khan's movie.
anyway, but then they were holding their hands to die, and then they came back and they took revenge.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly the same.
yeah. I thought
But the mother is the same, she's alive.
he's still alive. I thought that's interesting. Yeah. It's not that kind of straightforward, right? So you have many, variables, and they influence each other, and then that's how come it becomes very complex. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. Yeah. So that's why karma is for us so difficult to understand. Information theory is not easy, even in science, it's very complex, right? But if you just said if you have one lifetime, you know how many minutes you have in one life. And every minute there's physical behavior, there's verbal behavior, there's mental behavior, and every minute comes to an end. So that's all this information, right? Same with our habituation patterns, is all based on information. So then you multiply that not with one lifetime or two or 100 or 1,000 or a million or a billion, but begin in this lifetime. So you can imagine it becomes a very complex system of information. Right? Yeah, but nothing is random. We don't really believe that, oh yeah, this person got this cancer, or this person got this stroke, or this person got a heart attack. But there's a reason for that, right? Something has to be a cause for that. Yeah, and then there's a cause for that. Of course, you say, okay, because the person diet was not good, or the immune system was not good. But what was the reason for that person not to have a good diet? Or what's the reason for it not to have a good immune system? Yeah, so we always go a step behind. Yeah, so then it becomes a very complex system, of course, in fact, relationships. Yeah, more question? Yeah, we have to fill the time. Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
you say courageous compassion,
Yeah.
that means when we act, we should address the root cause of the suffering, which is basically this, say, for example, not having, having a self-cherishing attitude. Basically, teaching seems to be the only way of being courageously compassionate.
Yeah. So courageous is one aspect, because if you know why people are suffering, and you know you can do something about it, it becomes this powerful mind. So same with Eve Ekman when she did some research in the healthcare, that people would just have pity feeling for other people suffering. Yeah, so yeah, it's just how you define empathy and how you define compassion, right? It depends. Yeah. But if empathy is defined as just having pity for somebody else's suffering, that causes a lot of stress and burnout, and you feel helpless. You cannot do anything about it. So that's kind of not constructive. But if you have a compassion that is focused upon understanding the suffering and focus upon whatever happens, I try to gonna do something about it, then it becomes a very constructive mind. And that's why we in Buddhism, we often emphasize to have a good motivation and help the person. And sometimes we cannot help the person, right? So then not to get discouraged by it, but to say, okay, I had a good motivation. I tried to help the best way I could, but I couldn't. May I be able to do this in the future? Yeah, so you make a kind of prayer or wish in the future to really do something about this. Yeah, and then it becomes very constructive. And then, because eventually, if you really believe in the Buddhist context, if you believe in the development of consciousness and development of the mind, then you can develop yourself. So if that's the case, you can completely develop all the way up to Buddhahood. So if that's courageous aspect, then what I just said, you can generate a mind of whatever happens in this life, whatever happens in the future lifetime, I just gonna continue. And like what Honen said with the earthquake, we have to develop compassion and bodhicitta and emptiness, right? And then you develop, and then you really can do something. You can help people not to have to experience this again. You can take them out of samsara. So that's kind of an extremely courageous aspect, and that's why we call bodhisattva. The sattva aspect has this power, we say in Tibetan. Janju Sempa. Yeah, the Sempa aspect has this power. It means heroic or heroine, hero or heroine. This incredible kind of strength that you make connection with beings. You know now it's difficult for them, but in the future you can lead them. So same with the Buddha. He showed example, right? When the Buddha gave his own body to the 5 cups, the tigers, right? The Buddha knew, okay, this body, this life, but if I make a connection with these 5 cups, then I can, in one point of time, I become to the earth, I teach the Dharma, and they will be my first disciples. So they think about that. Lama Zopa Rinpoche once in Bulgaria, same thing, put on all the windows, open all the screens, mosquitoes, like thousands of them sitting there. He took off his upper skirt and was sitting like that, full of mosquitoes. So then what Lama Zopa Rinpoche did is kind of make a strong prayer, make a connection with these mosquitoes. May I, future lifetime, lead them to the light. So that's probably, similar to that. That's how you get out of the lower realms. So that's kind of very fast visions. They don't look in one lifetime or a few years, they look lifetimes. So now I make a connection with this person, a few lifetimes down the line, I can teach this person, a few lifetimes down the line, this person develops, a few lifetimes down the line, this person gets realizations, a few lifetimes beyond that, they get liberated. See, so that's kind of this vast vision of keep going, and probably because of the clairvoyance, they know, okay, I make this connection now, okay, next lifetime more, then lifetime more, then help them. So that's kind of, and then there's little things like being tortured in prison or things like that. It's nothing. Think, okay, great, another car, you fight and make a connection with these officials, and then I lead them. So that's kind of, for us, very difficult to comprehend, that kind of vast mind, because we only think about this life or this year, but if you really think about lifetimes and then the possibility of development, then this makes a lot of sense. If that's not really thought about, then it sounds like nonsense.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Just one question.
Yeah.
What is the importance of motivation, like when you're helping others,
Yeah.
or like when you're compassionate about somebody? So when you see a beggar or a cripple, you rescue money.
Yeah.
But when I saw Lama Zopa Rinpoche coming out of the temple, he saw a cripple who was just walking.
Yes.
Rinpoche. He did a lot of prayers.
Yeah.
And I would have just given like 30 rupees. He asked his assistant to give 10 rupees.
Yeah.
And he gave it to him. If I would have given to that cripple, he would have said, hey, you are giving just 10 rupees. But he was so at peace.
Yeah.
So what's the importance of motivation, and how do we, in our daily lives, when we do something, help others, and how does that benefit?
Yeah, so the motivation and the dedication is very important. So whatever you give, or whatever way you try to help others, if you have the motivation by doing this, may I lead this person beyond suffering, not just temporary happiness, right? But to lead them all the way up to enlightenment. You create cause for that, whatever act you do, and then you dedicate for that purpose. So, and the same you can also think if you just do ordinary activity, like walking in the office or something like that. You can always think, whoever sees me, hears me, thinks about me, dreams about me, may I make a connection with a person? And by having a connection, may that person be free of mental suffering, physical suffering. May I lead that person to enlightenment. There's 2 aspects. One aspect, you make a connection with beings, which is very important for bodhisattvas, and it gives you the courageous kind of motivation to develop. Because if you don't develop, then this connection doesn't make sense. You have to develop yourself to help them. So then there's kind of 2 benefits from that, right? And then you always have to be kind of realistic, with people who ask for things. And I always use the example of one of my own teachers, Geshe-la Rinpoche. He's now also in his late 80s, I think. He's always a very easygoing personality, so he was one of the top teachers in the monastery, but still went without attendant just to the local village, Kushalagar, in the rickshaw, And then he met this beggar, and the beggar said, hungry. So he took him to the restaurant, gave him a meal, right? And then the meal was finished, and the beggar said, chai. So he gave him chai. And then the tea was finished, then the beggar said, then my teacher said, no, okay, that's enough. So yeah, it's kind of depending on the motivation, and you try to do your best to help. But the motivation is very important. You just give some money, because it's a kind of habit, or you just generate great motivation. And she's now so very much used to do that a lot. And then pray, like prayer for making the connection, based on that connection, to lead that person. So that's kind of important mental health. Yeah.
Sir, you spoke about conventional self, and then there was an ultimate self. I cannot remember it. Can you rephrase, please?
Yeah. So there's two aspects, right? I mentioned the conventional from the point of view of consciousness. Yeah, the conventional, you could say, Buddha potential, and the ultimate Buddha potential, right? So the conventional one is the clear light mind. Yeah. So your clear light mind and the clear light mind of everybody else is exactly the same. Yeah. So that clear light mind goes all the way up to Buddhahood. So that's the conventional Buddha potential, you could say. As mentioned in the Uttara Tantra, and in particular in the Vajrayana vehicles. So, but there's also an ultimate aspect to that clear light mind is empty of inherent existence. Yeah, that clear light mind doesn't exist in and by itself. So it's lacking that independence. Yeah. So that lacking independence, or lacking inherent existence, or lacking intrinsic existence, or lacking existing in and by itself, that's the ultimate reality, the mind. So your ultimate reality of your subtle mind and the ultimate reality of the mind of the Buddha, exactly the same. Your most subtle conventional mind and the mind of the Buddha, exactly the same. Yeah, so in that way, we can talk about two types of Buddha potential. Yeah, conventional and ultimate. And from the point of view of self, there is a conventional self, and that conventional self is a merely imputed person. We talked about imputation. If you look at your body, what actually is your body is just an imputation on time and location, how cells are ordered in a particular way. So same with the continuity of consciousness. What is consciousness is just an imputation based on the mere collection of moments of consciousness, right? So then the conventional reality there is the conventional mere self that exists, the merely imputed self that is imputed upon the mere collection of the body and mind. That's a conventional self that exists. Then ultimately, it's empty of inherent existence. Yeah? So your body is empty of inherent existence. The mind is empty of inherent existence. So yeah, that emptiness of inherent existence, that's the ultimate aspect of reality. Yeah, so maybe there, say that. Yeah, maybe not. Then maybe I made it more complicated for you. Yeah, so maybe I'm very hungry here. maybe it's the hunger. Yeah, so just the food came in. You at home also, you have your food? Yeah. So let's have a break then, or not? Yeah, so we dedicate 2 bodhicittas, and then have a break till when? 2. Let's do half an hour, that should be enough. People online, you able to have your meal? Half an hour? Yeah. So let's start again, 10 past 2. 10 past 2? Yeah? Okay. Janjo Semjo Rimboche, Maya Panam Giguchi, Java Nyamba Mebaya, Gone Gonda, Tony Tawa Rimboche, Maya Panam Giguchi, Java Nyamba Mebaya, Gone Gonda, yo. Okay, people online, bon appetito, and then see you 2 past 2. Not 2 past 2, 10 past 2. Yeah. People here also, yeah. Lunch. Yeah. Yeah, so if we start, we can start. Okay, I got the permission to start. After I asked permission from my boss. All right, so before we start, important to generate the correct motivation. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, we talked about a few things this morning, right? We talked about 3 types of compassion. Yeah, the compassion of merely focus upon the suffering of others, the compassion focus upon the suffering of others in the mind, continuity of the person who has realized subtle impermanence, right? And we talked about the compassion in the mind of the person who has realized emptiness. And then the one in the last one is the most profound one. Yeah. Aspect of having realized emptiness. Why? Because that helps you to understand why we are suffering, and it helps us to understand how to do something about it. So that's kind of the most courageous compassion. As we know, compassion is the wish for others to be free of suffering in general. So there's a different types of compassion, right? We have the compassion, a general compassion, and we have the great compassion, so to say. Yeah. So great compassion is compassion that is dedicated to take responsibility to liberate others from their suffering. And this great compassion sometimes also is called in Tibetan Ningji, means the wish to be of refuge for others. Yeah, a wish to be of refuge in the sense, as we know, there's different types of refuge. There's refuge for the small scope, middling scope, great scope. Yeah, so here is a refuge that wishes to be a safe direction for others in the sense of helping others to eliminate the suffering, to take responsibility in that direction. And also the courageous compassion that we talked about, combined with understanding emptiness, is this compassion that takes this kind of responsibility. As we know, in the Four Noble Truths, we have not Four Noble Truths, also 4 the 4 immeasurables. Sometimes here in the mind, and what comes out of here sometimes doesn't go accordance with each other. So the Kasa, the 4 measurables, you can see there is the compassion of how wonderful if sentient beings are free of suffering. Then may they be free of suffering. And the third one is I will cause them to be free of suffering. Yeah, so the first 2 types of compassion is just general compassion. How wonderful it be if they're free of suffering, may they be free of suffering. And the third type, I will cause them, or I will take responsibility to free them from suffering. That's the what we call the great compassion, right? The compassion with kasa, with responsibility. So that compassion is the courageous one. Yeah, that you take the responsibility to do it. And if that courageous compassion, that you take responsibility, or Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to say, by myself alone, yeah, I will cause sentient beings to be free, suffering by myself alone. It's a very strong statement that you are going to do that. So that's kind of an incredible, courageous one. And this Holiness Dalai Lama emphasizes always a lot. That if you have that kind of compassion and you develop it over lifetimes, then you don't have to worry anymore, because then you're going in a particular direction, liberating others. You don't have to worry about when you die where you go, because you go the right direction. Yeah, so when we die, there's different possibilities, as you know. Yeah, you say you can go up, or you can go down, or you can go similar. Yeah, there's different ways when you die. You know? But yeah, there's many people interested in POA and transfers of consciousness and things like that. But the main transfers of consciousness is if you have compassion, then you don't have to worry. Yeah, because automatically will go in the right direction. And so, yeah. So to generate compassion, we know compassion is a mind that wishes others to be free of suffering. Yeah, that's how compassion is defined. And then, if you then take responsibility for that, then it becomes what we call the compassion 7 cause and effect method, or the 7 instructions, I should say. Cause and effect. It says the kasa, the special intention. Yeah, that is compassion. Meaning you take responsibility, not merely others to be free of suffering, but you don't do that. So if you then have realize emptiness or understand emptiness, then this compassion becomes extremely sophisticated. That's why we said that the compassion based on realization of emptiness is the most courageous one. Yeah. And not only the most courageous one, also probably that is how it's been developed. Yeah. The most people, they think emptiness is difficult, yeah, but actually to generate bodhicitta is more difficult, because bodhicitta takes a very long habituation that is needed. Well, emptiness, you just one day have to get a reason right, and then have the right amount of merits, accumulation of merits, purification, active mind, and then it's just a reason, then you get it. The emptiness is very straightforward. You see how the eye appears, and then you analyze, and then you come to the conclusion that it does not exist the way it appears. So you realize. So realize emptiness is not that difficult, probably. But yeah, you have to have first realize kasa, accumulate merit, purify negative deeds, and then study well, contemplate, and then slowly over time it develops, right? That's why the Sonin said many times that after having studied and contemplated emptiness after 6 decades, now it looks like I start to understand it. Yeah, so 6 decades we think, oh, that's long, but actually it's nothing. Yeah, if you think about beginner's lifetime, then it's nothing. So yeah. So then we have to understand and study emptiness to a great extent. Yeah, you can study the different scriptures or the different courses you can do. It's very essential. As we started with today, that Shantideva said, the first chapter, was the first verse in chapter 9, that all the branches of the teachings of the Buddha were meant for the purpose of understanding emptiness. That to lead disciples to liberation and enlightenment is all done with without realizing emptiness. You cannot achieve liberation, you cannot achieve enlightenment. So that's why emptiness is very essential, ultimate nature. And we talked about ultimate nature of the mind, but many people interested in the mind. This is very interesting. But to realize the emptiness of the mind in the sutra system in particular, then it's easier to first realize the selflessness of the person. So why is it so? Because the selflessness of the person, the object of refutation, so to say, or the object that has to be refuted, how the eye appears of the person, is much easier to recognize. Why is it so? Because when I say person, you already know that person is imputed. When you say person, or you call your own name, then you know it's just a label based on your mere collection of your body and your mind. So your mere collection of your body and your mind is being given the label Namdak, or you call your own name. So to see that a person is a label is much easier than to see that a mind is a label. Yeah, or that the body is a label, because the body appears like a physical substance. But actually, what is the body? If you look at the cells changing, as we talked about, then you cannot find a body. And from its own side, I should say, you cannot find it from its own side existing body, an inherent body. You cannot find, yeah, within the different levels, of cells changing. Yeah, so in order to understand emptiness more, ultimate reality of the mind, then for that purpose, we often go to the roots. Of course, comes from sutras, the Perfection of Wisdom sutras, and then summarized by Chandrakirti, right, the great master of ancient India. Chandrakirti, he came down to the sevenfold reasoning. The sevenfold reasoning helps us to understand emptiness. So the sevenfold reasoning of Chandrakirti, to summarize it, comes down to two aspects or two types of approach to realize emptiness. One type of approach is the one with or different from reasoning. So that's kind of logic or epistemology, you would say. Yeah, so if something exists, it should be one with the body or different from the body. If something exists, it should be one with or different from the mind. And so that's very logical. One with means it has to be that thing itself. And if it's not that thing itself, it should be something else, right? So everything that exists is either your body itself or different or something else than your body, like the table or the microphone or the building. Yeah. So everything that exists is either being your body or being something else. That's pretty clear. Or everything that exists is either your mind or being something else. Yeah, so that's so logical. So this logic reasoning is praised by many meditators because it's a very clear cut. You know, it's kind of, it's either this or either that. There's no third possibility. You know, so Kasa, when you say either one with the body and the mind or different from the body and mind, what you want to check?
I will just check. Yeah,
I think it's okay. It's recording and yeah,
everything good.
I think okay. So yeah, either one with or different from. Everything that exists is either your body or something else. Everything that exists is either your mind or something else, right? So that's the first two aspects of Chandrakirti, is reasoning. That if the I exists, that's the thing. The way the I appears as a very independent entity, that's not the reality. So we say things do not exist the way they appear. Yeah, that's in general is very true. If we look at things, or we hear things, or we think about things, what appears to your mind, you think that's the reality, but is that true or not? You know, that we talked about sitting in Cowan Park, what was it called? Yeah, I called it. There's a bigger one. La Park, or yeah, you go to the beach somewhere. Goa, maybe Goa, maybe go somewhere else. Maybe go somewhere quiet, in Kerala or something. So then you sit there and oh, nice. And then a person who's depressed says, oh, not nice. Yeah. So what's out there is very interesting. What appears to your mind is very subjective. Yeah, but the problem is we believe what appears to our mind, that's the reality. And then when afflictions are strong, then we believe that's the reality. So we angry at a person and we only see faults in that person, no qualities. But that's not a reality. Then we get attached to our Punjabi food or the lunch we had today or something like that. And then you get very attached. You think, oh, I have this and I'll be so happy. The problem is then you have that food and it's a bit tasty, but it doesn't bring you ultimate happiness, right? Yeah. So yeah, I said I have a lot of experience. We all have a lot of experience with that, with parties and all kinds of things in life. So we always expect that's attachment. Same with people. There's nothing wrong with social activities, but you know, you're gonna see a person you didn't see a long time. And then you think, oh, if I'm with this person, that would be so nice. And then because of this, because of that, there's all attachment. Then you're with that person and it's kind of, oh, it's actually quite normal like before. There's nothing special. You know that experience? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So interesting that you have these expectations and then it actually happens and it's, oh, it's not according to the expectation, right? You know that feeling? Yeah.
Yes, very well.
Yeah. So I was so appreciate once told a very interesting story like that. You know, I mean, a few of you have heard. So interesting. So when you, yeah, those who have relationships, they have more experience with that. But they really want to be with a person. You can't wait to be with that person. So, yeah. So out of strong desire, attachment, you can't wait to be with a person. Say, if I'm with this person, I'll be so happy. So person, so happy. And then you're with a person, and then there's an argument. And then you say, I can't wait to be separated from this person. If I separate from the person, I will be so happy. So it's very interesting. You know, I was over here once explain that story. It's yeah, it's very true. So yeah, I was with my mother. My mother knows that I talk about her a lot in talks. She knows that it's okay to ask permission. She also said, Namdak, because she called me Namdak. Geshe-la sometimes. Yeah, so then she said, Kasa, we're looking so much forward to see each other and then we're together and then it's like normal. And then you have to go and then I feel sad. That's attachment, isn't it? I said, very good, Mom. Spot on. Yeah, because it's true, right? That we look forward to a particular event or being with a person and then we have that event or be with a person and it's like normal like before. There's nothing special. See, so then I said to Mom, you know, there's nothing wrong with being together, but attachment, that's the problem. Yeah, so you have too many expectations. When expectations are not met, and then there's no satisfaction. Yeah, so yeah, then I can get no satisfaction, or I haven't found what I'm looking for, or in the Hindi pop songs, probably have very similar quotes, right?
Yes, it's Rolling Stones.
Yeah, but in the Bollywood scene, probably
Yes.
very similar kind of songs. Yeah. I don't know how profound their understanding is, but it is true, right? That we have expectations and they're not met and then there's no satisfaction. So that proves that these minds of attachment, they are not in accordance with reality because they overestimate the qualities of a particular event or situation, and then you are in that situation and then it's different. Yeah, so interesting. So in one way, you can say that all these afflictions and things like that are just a play of the mind. It's very interesting. It's just like a show, you know, that things come up and go and come up and go. And then you see there is no I that is in charge. So if you really understand that, then there's no grasping at things anymore. That you don't grasp at events anymore. You don't grasp at emotions anymore, good or bad, because you know it's just a play of the mind. That things come and go. So if you have this blue sky-like mind, you're in the blue sky-like mind, and you look at the clouds like passing. You see? So if disturbing emotions come, so the thing is, first of all, in order to go that direction, first what we do is we apply the antidotes towards disturbing emotions. Yeah, so first you have to get rid of the coarse levels, then you go to the subtle ones. And so first what you do, you analyze the faults of the affliction and you contemplate the benefits of the antidote. Yeah, for example, you contemplate the benefits of patience and the drawbacks of anger, and you do that over 20, 30 years, and then you change. Yeah. Some people do it. One of my friends in London, he did it within a few years. I was quite impressed. He used to be very angry in meetings, he said. He really rat and shouting. Yeah. And then after a few years, he became very calm. And then his colleague said, what happened to you? Yeah, so it is possible, even within a few years. Yeah. But yeah, so you contemplate the faults of the affliction and the benefits of the antidote. You do that over a sustained period of time, And then you just believe yourself, it's not clever to follow the affliction, and it's much better to follow the constructive form of thinking. Yeah, so if you really see the faults of anger, of disturbing your mind, no clarity, making the wrong decision, only seeing faults, being very negative, which activates all the negative thoughts, you know. You lose your sleep, and you say something wrong, you regret, and you know, there's so many drawbacks of anger. The more you understand that, and then you see, if you keep your mind calm and patient, in the mind of being patient, you can still act. You can still be very direct people. You can even be firm. And yeah, so I said before, practicing patience doesn't mean an overcooked vegetable in the corner or something like that. You know, practice patience can be still courageous. I always use the example of His Holiness when we organized public talks here in Bangalore 2 times, but also other places. So we organized a public talk somewhere else, and there was many formalities at the university, and there's one politician felicitating the other one, and blah 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 blah. You know, went on and on and on. Yeah, just for money and business like that. And then it was time for His Holiness to talk, and His Holiness said, "Too much for formality, waste of time." Very direct. So, but in control, right? There's no anger or irritation. Straight away, there's a laughter, and start with a talk. So that's kind of constructive minds that has, you know, constructive kind of meeting or whatsoever. So also in meetings, you can be, or a school teacher or parents can be very direct with the children, but inside peaceful, but externally you can be firm, you know, for the benefit of the person. So that's kind of the real kind of compassion, right? Yeah. So often our compassion, love, and kindness is mixed with attachment. So we say, "Oh, all sentient beings enlightenment, except this one." So that means that it is mixed with afflictions. So we have to generate compassion that is not mixed with afflictions. So for that purpose, initially we have to get rid of affliction. So initially you contemplate the faults of the affliction, as we just said, and then you contemplate the benefits of its antidote. Then over time you can play much better, because the afflictions are not that strong anymore. So then when they come up, you recognize them. You say, "Oh, look, there it's coming. Interesting." So you don't get that easily influenced anymore as you did before. And then you can just look at it, you know, and then you know, oh, disturbance. Interesting. If you look at it from a distance, then that afflictions cannot control you anymore. So same as we often say, if a person is lying to you, and that person knows that you know that a person is lying, that person will stop lying, right? Because there's no point. So in a similar way, if you know that the afflictions are lying to you, then Mr. Smith, his fellows, they will stop trying to take you back to the matrix. Yeah. So if you see that the afflictions are not according to reality, and you see it's just a play of the mind, it doesn't influence you. You take a distance, right? If you take a distance from events, there's clarity of the mind, there's no influence. Same with trauma, same with depression and mental difficulties. If you go somewhere else and you have a break, you come back and there's clarity again. You can see the problems much better than before. When you're in the middle of problems, there's no clarity. So sometimes we take a break and we come back and there's clarity again. So same with the afflictions. If you take a distance, or trauma, whatsoever, if you take a distance, then there's clarity of the mind and you can deal with the situation much better. So if you have a neutral perspective and you just understand the nature of the mind, and then you just look at afflictions when they come up and you look at them straight into the eyes, so to say, then they will lose their potential. They just crumble down, as they say. Yeah? So that's kind of a way that helps us to understand not only the ultimate nature of the mind, but also various levels of the conventional aspects of the mind. Not only the clear-line mind, but also that everything is just a play of the mind itself. Things come and go. If you understand that things come and go, there's no grasping. Yeah, so that's kind of what we often, that's Nagarjuna's, I think it's from Commentary on Bodhicitta or Letter for a Friend, I'm not sure. There's this example of written in water. Yeah, if you write something in a stream, it doesn't stay. Yeah, so it goes. So that should be our mindset with regards to afflictions. But often our mindset is kind of written in stone. When there's an affliction, it stays like it's written in stone, very strong. And so we have to understand and let go and see it's a play of the mind, and then eventually we will see it as written in water. So then it doesn't influence you. And that's exactly what they do, the scientists, when they start measuring meditators who have 15 to 50,000 hours of meditation done. And then it indicates very high gamma waves. Yeah, that is beyond the chart. And they have to start measuring. Yeah, it was never measured before. So very interesting. Richard Davidson and others. You know. So then the explanation behind that is people, they don't grasp, they don't hold on to things anymore. So that's kind of same with the Dalai Lama when Paul Ekman, one of the world leading experts in facial expressions, when he met the Dalai Lama for the first time, he said, I've seen so many faces, so many different cultures. He pinpointed down to like 10,000 different muscular differences in the face. And then he said, I never seen a face like His Holiness. Because if you see, there's an emotion, of course, sadness, things in Tibet or other aspects of life, but straight away there's laughter. There's no holding on to things. And so and you see that everywhere in movies and soap series and things like that. It's very good to express your emotions and hold on to them and things like that. But actually, it's not very constructive. Yes. So if you see things as a play of the mind, and then there's no holding on to it, and then it's easy to let go, and then things just come and go and play. So same with afflictions like anger, attachment, things like that. If they come up, you recognize, oh, look, attachment. Oh, look, anger. Interesting. If you have that kind of approach, you take a distance from that affliction, right? So in the early days, you get angry for days, then you get angry for a few hours, then you get angry for a few minutes. And if you're in that part, then eventually you see that when anger comes up, you see, oh, look, anger, interesting. And then you just don't hold on to it anymore. You can just let it go. So that's another method of understanding the conventional aspect of the mind, of coming and going. But also, if you combine it with the ultimate aspect of the mind, we just talked about, that the mind itself is this clear-line mind, and then this gunk around it is just influencing you, but actually it's not a part of your mind itself. So then you can see things as just a play of the mind. And if you combine that with understanding emptiness, that there's no, from its own side, existing I to be blamed. Yeah, so people with low self-esteem, and in the West, I don't know, in India, you also have this guilt feeling or something. No? Is it? It's a modern society thing, I think. Is it? Because I was hanging out in the monastery for 20 years. And then I went to London all of a sudden and just dropped myself in the middle of the city. And then, in the monastery, we hang out and tease each other all the time and play around with the ego. And it's very interesting. The beginning was not easy, but my roommate was always like to the edge. Oh, not like, no, you're almost getting angry. So it's in the beginning it was not easy, but the long term was very interesting. Tibetans are very good with teasing each other, and almost going to the edge. When the ego comes up, they say, "Hey, you see, the ego is coming up." So in the beginning it's not easy, but the long term is very beneficial. So then I went to London, and then so many issues with self-doubt and guilt and low self-esteem and things like that. So in the beginning, I just had to ask my friends in London, what does it actually mean? Because, if you live in a kind of monastery environment like in Serra, then people see that as, why would you have low self-esteem? Why would you have guilt feeling? Why would you do that to yourself? You don't do that. Yeah, so it's so interesting, there's a completely different approach. Yeah, so then you can see, then it's just a play of your mind. There's so many people just making it difficult for themselves, because of overthinking the wrong thing. So then if you just let go and don't grasp at those things, then it's much easier. So the let go and grasping at things is, you can relate also to another aspect of Chandakirti sevenfold reasoning, of dependent origination, right? Things are in the nature of dependence. Things are in the nature of cause and effect, especially our mind, our body. Then we have a dependence of parts and a collection of parts, right? The different parts of the body, the aspects of the mind, the relationship between the collection of moments and individual moments. The more you understand that, the less grasping you have at an inherent entity or inherent I or inherent consciousness. So also Chandakirti talks about this dependence. The most subtle form of dependent origination is then the dependent origination of being merely imputed by the mind. We said already, if you look what actually is your body, is just an imputation based on your cells being located at a particular location, at a particular time, and then you say, oh, look, that's my body. But there's nothing more than that. You cannot find an inherent body in your cells. You cannot find inherent body in your organs. It's just your cells are there organized in a particular way at a particular time. Then you say, okay, this I call my body. And so that's very true. Also for the mind, it's very true, because what actually is your mind is just a continuity of moments at a particular time, and you say, okay, that's my continuity of consciousness over these minutes or over these seconds. There's nothing more than that. Yeah. So then you see the dependence of the individual moments, and you see the dependence of cause and effect, and that leads to the third level of dependence, that things are just imputed. Yeah, so that things are merely imputed does not mean that there have to be a person who gives a label or names it like a particular way. So if you look where is the self, the inherent self, or where is the inherent body, or where is the inherent mind, you cannot find an inherent body, you cannot find an inherent mind. But what you actually come to the conclusion is that your body is just a label or imputation based on your cells being organized at a particular location in a particular way, and you say, okay, that's my body. There's nothing more than that. So same with your mind, that your mind at a particular period of time, moments collected, then you say, okay, this is my consciousness. But there's no findable kind of from its own side existing mind to be found. So that's kind of the most difficult level of independent origination, is that things are merely imputed. Yeah, we talked about your bank account or money, Yeah, so we had a time in India that the 500 rupee notes changed. It was, all of a sudden change, and then yeah. So then you can see, and even just a 500 rupee note is just a piece of paper with some ink on it, and that has been designated as 500 rupees, but there's nothing else to that, right? So for us, it's kind of, oh yes, 500 rupees. But for a mouse or something like that, it's just a piece of paper. And so when I was in retreat in Dharma, there was a 100 rupee note as offering, to deity. And then one mouse was there living, and he thought, I have to make a nest. So that's a nice piece of paper. So the mouse just got a piece of paper to make, little small pieces to make a nest, Very interesting. So yeah, for the mouse, it's just a piece of paper. For us, it's kind of labeled as 100 rupees, but then we grasp at it. You see, we although we know, if you think about it, we know it's just an imputation. Like this piece of paper is worth 500 rupees. I can buy things with it, but actually, it's just a label. But then we grasp at it as existing in and by itself. See that? So our body is exactly the same. Our mind is exactly the same. But we don't see that often. We grasp at it as existing in and by itself. And that causes a problem, because then there's this I that comes up, and when the I comes up, then the different afflictions come up. So there's stronger grasping at the I, then there's stronger self-cherishing, and by stronger self-cherishing, there's stronger afflictions, and then when the afflictions get stronger, then the I becomes stronger, and then this goes in a circle, you know. So the clue is to recognize that afflictions are not in accordance with reality, so that's with expectations of attachment, or overestimating the faults with anger. In a similar way, that ignorance thinks it is understanding reality, but actually is completely misunderstanding reality. Yeah? So ignorance means, in Tibetan we say maripa, means not knowing. Yeah? So there's different types of ignorance. Not knowing who is walking on the street at a moment. That's also a type of ignorance, but that doesn't really disturb us, unless you cannot sit still until you know who's walking on the street. Yeah, maybe people like that, but I'm not sure. Yeah, so that's a type of ignorance that's not really an issue. Yeah, not knowing. But the real issue is with regards to reality. Yeah, the ignorance that grasps at itself. Yeah, also that's a maripa, not knowing. And it's different types. That those who are views and not views, and anyway, we don't have much time to talk about it. But the main root cause of samsara, the Chandakriti, is then the grasping at inherent existence, right? Apprehension of inherent existence. And that's twofold, that we have a grasping at an I, and we have a grasping at mine. So we call that the view of the transitory collection. Yeah? So transitory means momentary changing. Yeah, your body and your mind are momentary changing. And that's why we call them transitory, and it's a collection, body and mind, or 5 aggregates. But then, so that's the reality. There's a reality of your body and your mind that exists, right? And on top of that reality, we impute a person. Yeah, you call your own name, say, okay, that's me. So that exists, that imputation exists. Imputed I, or imputed Namdak, or whatever you call yourself, that exists. But then on top of that, we think there is an inherent I. So Rinpoche, Lamso Rinpoche sometimes said, a false I on top of the real I. Yeah, that there is a kind of, sometimes we say superimposition, sometimes easier to understand, maybe a projection. Yeah, like if you project on a screen, you project a reality that's not there. Yeah, you project people doing things, you know, or you have this what is it, a virtual reality, you know, those things. So you have that, and then you think, oh, things are happening, but actually, it's just an hallucination, right? It's just you know, the glasses, the machine, the VR is just letting you see things that are not there. Yeah, so it's a projection, means it projects things that are not there, and then you believe they are there. So in a similar way, your body exists, your mind exists. On top of that, we impute an I, or a person that exists. But then on top of that, we say there is from its own side existing I. Right, so that does not exist. And so there's a self. Yeah.
How does imputed I exist? Because it's not there, right?
The imputed I exists, right? That means that you call your own name, and that exists, and that's a label on top of your mere collection of your body and your mind, right? So your mere collection of your body and mind exists. That label exists, which is just how we define ourselves. But then the problem is we superimpose, or we project something on top of that. Yeah, so we project an I on top of that. Or another person, same thing. If you have a person walking by who has a body connected with consciousness that exists, that passes by, but then you think there's an inherent I passing by, inherent person, I should say, passing by, right? That does not exist. And so same with so many things. We buy a new phone, and then you know, it's just For example, we buy a phone and we can collect tomorrow. Yeah, something like that. So you pay, you make an agreement, you sign, this is my phone. But the shopkeeper says, yeah, tomorrow you can collect. Maybe you have to give it a polish or something. Anyway, so then you can collect tomorrow. So you know my phone. So there's like 20 phones there, all the same. But one of them you signed, you paid, it's yours. So your agreement that as your phone is just in the mind, right? Because all those 20 phones are exactly the same. It's just one of them on paper is yours. But there's nothing else. Before you sign the paper and after you sign the paper, the phone itself didn't change from, oh, I'm a phone and now I'm yours. From the side of the phone, there's no change. It's just our label, then there's a change, a difference. So then you go tomorrow collect, but then what happened overnight, they break in and they steal the phones. Then you think, oh, my phone. Yeah, but actually it's just an invitation, right? So my phone, then you see that, so interesting. I remember this many years ago. Now I don't, iPhones are very expensive, and I remember, I know the number now, but in the early days we had number 4. Remember, at the time of iPhone 4, then there was this shop in China, used to open at 9 o'clock, but it didn't open at 9 o'clock. It was the first shop that was selling. And you know, if there's some new thing, then people get very hyper about it, and they want to have the first one or something like that. You know? So they were lining up in front of that shop, and then you can see, I want my iPhone, right? so then they said it, and then that's strong attachment based on an I, right? And then the shopkeeper didn't open the shop at 9 o'clock, so people got angry, and they started throwing stones at the windows of that shop because they needed this phone. So there's attachment, then they separate it from the phone, and then anger comes in. Because if you separate it from your object of desire, then you get uncomfortable. And you don't like to be uncomfortable. So you fight against that, and then anger comes. So interesting. Because of this iPhone, right? Yeah, so I don't know, where does I actually stand for? iPhone, iPad, this, I don't know where it actually comes. It's just the eye of people know it's kind of, people have a strong attachment to its eye, so let's call it iPhone. I'm not sure. yeah.
Clever marketing.
Yeah, probably, psychology and marketing. Yeah. So that's true. So you can see then those kind of examples so clear that there's a sense of an I, and then because there's attachment, and then you don't meet the object of attachment. You feel very uncomfortable, and you don't like to feel uncomfortable, so you get angry. So interesting. You can see how it all relates. So if you then understand that this I is not there, the way it appears, then there the anger and the attachment also disappears, right? So that's kind of very interesting. And if you then see that that's true for you, then you also see that's true for others, and then you start to understand the working of the mind and the working of creating suffering and the working of eliminating suffering. Yeah, so that's so interesting. And then your compassion becomes very sophisticated, because then you really understand why people are suffering, and you really understand that there's no need for them to suffer, and you also really understand there's no difference between you and them, because there's no I here and them over there. It's 2 different entities. It's your clear-eyed mind, their clear-eyed mind, and that is just overcast by various karma and afflictions, and that's why the clarity is not there. And the clear-eyed mind is exactly the same, but the junk around it is different, right? And so that's so interesting if you contemplate those aspects. So interesting, because then you start to feel close to people, right? Because then there's no ego playing a role. Right? Then it's much easier to generate compassion and to generate love and kindness, because there's no boundaries, right? So same with people with ego dissolution. They say they feel connected with others. Exactly same thing. Yeah, so if you understand there's no inherent I here and inherent I there between us and them, then also there's no real difference. So then it's kind of yeah. And then you also understand that it's possible for you, but it's also possible for them to eliminate afflictions because they're not an innate part of the mind. Yeah, the dirt is not a part of the jewel, or the clouds are not a part of the blue sky. So you can separate the two. So if you separate the two, then you can help beings to be free of suffering. So that's a little bit, what I was planning to talk about today, I think. Was it?
Geshe-la, I think can you just have 5-10 minutes break for tea, and then they continue the last session.
Yeah, or we just
because I can see people are like little restless and
that's why I was thinking, or maybe we just have no break and just have some question
I think we
answers
have
and
break
tea.
and then a Q&A.
Yeah, let him decide not
Unless
to.
it's you take.
Yeah, maybe otherwise it gets too long, no? Yeah, so if there's any questions left, then maybe we do a few more questions and then have a break tea after, and then here we go. Yeah. Is there any questions left, or
Yeah, sure. And just one scientific question. You were talking about Professor Richard Davidson, right? About the waves of the mind. And there are so many people who do the wave monitoring for the happiest person in the world. What is the best kind of state of mind to be in according to waves?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist, but from a Buddhist perspective, it's much easier to explain, right? Because from science, high gamma waves, or high this, or high that, or related with prefrontal cortex, or this, that. It's all kind of, it's not that easy, right? Often what happens with scientists who are measuring, they don't have the knowledge of meditation techniques. And so they don't really know exactly what they are measuring. And then the meditators, they don't know neuroscience. Yeah. So that's kind of a gap that still has to be filled in. If that gap is filled in, then I think we can progress much more. But until then maybe just see that, okay, what's the cause for suffering? Afflictions. And what is rooted? Ignorance. That's actually much more beneficial, right? What the results of that are in brain activity is just secondary. Yeah. But it's interesting to see that you can prove, that positive states of mind are related with I mean, if you see that in brain activity, are related with mind trainings, right? It's very interesting science. I mean, and there's one neuroscientist, Marieke van der Vrucht, also she's related with mind and life, and she came to the monastery to measure monks debating. So not meditation like this, but analytical meditation, right? Monks debating. So very interesting science. Then she said, next to problem solving, there's also a very high score in the data related with emotional regulation. So interesting, because in debates there's no place for the ego. If you have a strong ego and you're debating, then you're gonna have a very hard time, because when you say something wrong, it's not only you know that, but the whole crowd knows it within seconds, because the person who debating you says, "You wrong, you contradicting," and then you sitting down and they looking down upon you and say, "You wrong, you contradicting yourself," and we show that. And then the whole crowd cheers, 1, 2, 3, "You wrong, you wrong," in front of your face. So if you have a bit of an ego at that time, it's very difficult. Yeah. So and you learn how to not grasp at ego, but see it as a play. So that's very interesting that this came.
Training in emotional regulation.
Yeah, so that's very interesting.
Failure.
Very interesting kind of science. Yeah.
Just following up on these questions. So when I look at the research that goes on for fMRI, which Marieke Davidson and some of the other neuroscientists have done, and they talk about that they produce some sounds of that some people are in trouble or they're going through a difficult situation. Has this been done with the sounds of family members, or especially when you're in a family life? When we go through ups and downs, I find that to be very difficult when I'm with my family members, especially with our children and parents and spouses.
Closer, right?
Yeah, the ones who are closer to us. I think sometimes the anger is hard to control as well.
Yeah. Because of the attachment, right?
Yeah, so
So the people in our direct surroundings, family and friends, we have more friends, we have more attachment tools too. So when something happens to them, it's closer, and that's why its emotion is much stronger. And then we react with anger, right? And so then you can see our love and kindness and compassion is not genuine. It's kind of mixed with attachment. That's very clear. Yeah, our love and kindness and compassion for our children, for example, if you have children or family members, is mixed with attachment. It's very clear. Yeah, so that you always first choose for your own child before choosing for somebody else. Your own child might be wrong in a particular situation, but you don't see that. So that's kind of very clear that attachment plays a role. So we should try to train the mind in a way that our love and kindness and compassion become more genuine, yeah, separated from attachment. That's very important.
when we were studying with Jennifer, he said the hardest time he had like when his older daughter was a teenager and he didn't know that he had that much anger.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a similar experience. Yeah, I was before I became a monk, before I was a Buddhist, I thought relationships are okay, but no children. Do my so, right? So then I was 18 years ordained, and then I took care of an orphan, right? And then I could practice patience quite well with human beings. Not with computers, it was sometimes a bit difficult. But then I had this little one. He was quite uptight, and then it's quite a challenge. So then you see that because sometimes we're in control to a certain extent, but then conditions change, and then there's a challenge, right? Same thing. And then I gave him a football to play with. And then one day he came back crying, said, "Oh, this person took my football." And then I went straight after that person. Yeah, so you can see this attachment towards the child. And then whatever person did, you do something about it, right? Yeah, very interesting.
But Geshe-la, isn't it your ones, loved ones, generate stronger emotions because you think also you can get away with.
Yeah, and I mean,
them, but with people who are more distant, you can't get away with.
Yeah, and people who are close to you is I, oh, mine child, or my this, my that. So the I is stronger, the mine aspect is stronger.
Possessiveness.
Yeah, so in Chandrakishti we say the view, the transfer, collection. One aspect is the I, and the other aspect is the mine, right? So there's two aspects, and both are imputed by nature, but then we grasp at them as inherent. That causes the problem. Yeah, another question. So, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Geshe-la, the information field that you talk about, like how is it possible to prove the existence of it? I mean, how is it stored? We can say it's non-local, but then it must be somewhere.
Yeah, it is. It's not somewhere. Information like this, if you follow Aaron Schrödinger, for example, and others, then they say information is not local. So and David Bohm relates it to as an implicate order. That's it's like a wave function. This kind of that comes and becomes implicate, and then later on it connects with other causing conditions and becomes a kind of explicit order, right? So in a similar way, our karma is kind of this implicate nature of reality. Then it meets conditions and it becomes manifest. You see? So that's very similar, the relationship as Carlos Casar and David Bohm's interpretation of the implicate order and very hidden variables, so to say, is very much related with information theory, that things we cannot measure, but they have an influence. Yeah, so, and it's also true with karma.
Sounds a lot also like the universal unconscious.
Yeah, there's many interpretations. Is is kind of Kazakh side Kazakh. There's many interpretations.
Like
Yeah.
Mind arises from the base.
Yeah, that's one interpretation. Even in quantum mechanics, there's cubism, for example. There's very much an interpretation in relation with the mind-only school that the uncertainty principle proves that the observer is influenced the observed. Yeah, so it's very much mind-only school of philosophy. that the observer is influencing what's been observed. So that in Cubism interpretation of quantum mechanics is very similar. Huh?
As in the
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but Carlo Rovelli's kind of relational quantum mechanics theory is very similar to dependent origination of Arya Nagarjuna, for example. So in quantum mechanics, there's very similarities between those interpretations and interpretations of different schools of Buddhist philosophy. And even in science, in physics, as biology, yeah, there's various new developments, very much in accordance with certain Buddhist interpretations. Yeah. Yeah.
Just through your experience, could you share some tips and tricks, like, the object of negation, which is defined by prasangika, the intrinsic self? How do we experience it and understand it more through maybe meditation or?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably, you have to just habituate yourself a lot and analyze a lot, in the sense that you have to recognize how the I comes up. Yeah, when somebody criticizes you, or when strong afflictions arise, or anger, or fear, right? You just have to build up an habituation. How does I appear? That's very important. You can explain it inside out as much as you like, but eventually you have to work on your own mind to understand how it appears, right? And then the logic is not too difficult. The most important difficult things are two. One is to recognize how the I appears. The second one is to hold that appearance and at the same time analyze. Oh, it's not in my body. Oh, it's not in my mind. It's not separate from my body. It's not separate from me. Oh, it's not there. So those two things are very difficult to recognize how it appears, and to hold it and analyze it at the same time. So you can be the most intelligent person in the world. That will not help. You, according to Buddhist interpretation, then you need to engage in preliminary practices. Right? So that means accumulation of merit and purifying the mind. Yeah, that's various preliminary practices, right? And that's probably very essential, very important. You really want to realize emptiness. And so just an intellectual understanding, there's maybe no need for that. Even Carlo Rovelli, once we met offline, not in a dialogue, but just personally, and then he also asked me the question, because he was so interested in emptiness. Yeah, he's a top scientist in quantum mechanics. He's so interested in emptiness. He asked me at one point of time, he said, do I have to become a Buddhist to understand emptiness? Yeah, very interesting. That kind of interest he had in emptiness. But I told him, for intellectual understanding, you don't have to become a Buddhist. I didn't talk about realization, but for realization, probably you really have to work hard. Yeah, Then you have to purify your mind for those two things to accomplish. Yeah, and that's what they said. This Lama Tsongkhapa was such an incredible scholar in his late 20s, but he just didn't get it. Why didn't he get it? Because he had to purify his mind, and then he went into retreat for 4 years and purified the mind and accumulated merit, and then realized emptiness, right? Yeah, that's all it for today. Yeah, so we still have tea, right? After, yeah. So before you leave, you can have chai. Yeah. People online, you come for chai, or you stay home? Yeah, yeah, very good chai actually. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so that's dedicate then. Maybe we do a bit more than cheetahs. So one important dedication is Holiness Dalai Lama often emphasizes is the Lamrim dedication prayer. So let's do that. And that you can find on page number 102. So yeah, today we talked about the nature of the mind, for each compassion, often relate to that. So the whole part, basically, we discussed more or less a little bit. Yeah, it's very fortunate, and we have accumulated a lot of merits. So dedicate, so give it a direction. For the, yeah, let's maybe just first read the Lamrim dedication prayer. It's very clear. Yeah, so try to think about the words and try to dedicate our virtue of today. Yeah. My two collections as vast as space, as I've amassed, from walking with effort in this practice for a great length of time. May I become a chief living Buddha for all those whose mind wisdom are multiplied by ignorance. Even if not reached this state, may I be held in loving compassion for all my life's mentorship. May I find the best complete graduate path of teachings, and may I please the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means, drawn by the strong force of compassion. May I clear the darkness of the minds of all beings, with the points of the paths that I have pursued them. May I behold Buddhist teachings for a very long time. With my heart glowing out with great compassion, in whatever direction most precious teachings have not yet spread or once have spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted boundless peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time. May even the graduate path to enlightenment complete, due to one of the victorious conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all humans and non-human beings who will emanate adversity and create conditions to practice excellent paths never impart any of their lives from the purest paths praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone's made effort to act in accordance with both my and Buddhist practice, may always be assisted by the mighty ones. May the ocean prosperity spread everywhere. So as I we do a few more. Do we have Rinpoche's return prayer somewhere here? No. Yeah.
No, sorry.
Are they?
Someone sent it on.
We don't have and I just read and then you can just pray now. So yeah, first we then next dedication we dedicate for of course as soon as Dalai Lama a long and healthy life and all his holiness wishes is fulfilled, and all other Lamas teachings true power to enlightenment, long and healthy life, and all the wishes to be spontaneous fulfilled, right? Yeah. So think like that. Recite. Dagi jine sabe gewa di tendam do gundam gamba. Geba jason lozan trapa yi tembe nimbo. Such is all different. Gare rawe gore singam so pendam dewa malu jongwe. Chenre zigwan tenzin gyazo yi jabe shite badu chi. Yeah, so those we have Rinpoche's long life. Sorry, swift return prayer. Yeah, they can recite along. Otherwise, pray for Rinpoche's swift return. Da mi tu bahagya haze zolo zangya ya zhe gyü Rajan shingi ya yu ma be de mun bandu ba gele su yon zu zo be tu den rin bo je sa dan du be jin jin ba la nam ya mi zhen zu ba gu jie zu mi jie zhen ba zhu ba de ben de ma lu ju hong wei guo jin bu ye wei ten ma yu zhu wa yi dun la chi du zhen ben jin mi hu zhu zhu xi wa xin de yi re dan jiu song ge zhe jin dan ge ze nam ye tu je la do je le me den ba na du sa zhu ge zang du je yin ba. Yeah, so then dedicates for spreading of Buddha Dharma in all directions. All beings become in contact with the Buddha. Yeah. Dagi jine sabe gewa di tendan do kindan kangen. Geba jezun lozan drapa yi tembe ningbo rindu zelje shu kare rawe korwe singa. So deva male jungwe jenre zigwan tenzin yatsu. Jabe shi de wadu. Also for all beings to generate bodhicitta in the mind, right? Janjo semjo rinpoche, magye panam diguch, jeba nyamba. Gone gonda birawa. Then next to bodhicitta, all sentient beings also understand without emptiness, to eliminate suffering samsara. Tony Tawa Rinpoche, my Gepana, Jeva Nyamba Meva, Gonin Gonde show. And then, in all future lifetimes, never be parted from precious gurus and quickly progress in state of part of enlightenment. Gewa Gunda Yanda Lama Dame Chugi Pelage, Sadan Lamgi Yundan Razen, Doje Changi Go by neutral show. And then, to conclude, then do you think you are empty of inherent existence? Prayer, dedication, empty of inherent existence, and the aim we dedicate to is to empty of inherent existence, and it may all be auspicious for the development of the mind, of which is emptiness to come about. Auspiciousness for the gurus, deities, like humans don't practice like that. Zagye Lama Nangye Dashi Jo Yiran Lazo Nangye Dashi Jo Karan Choe Khor Sum Ling Nangye Dashi Jo. Okay, thank you so much for your interest and coming here and being in CKSL and things like that. So thank you, and then see you soon. See you soon. Yes.
Thank you, Geshe-la.
Thank you, online people.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you soon. See you soon. Bye.